What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Technical Fowl podcast. As always, you're joined by the three of us. I'm Jack Anderson. To my left is Sanders Oakley, who has secrets he cannot tell us, apparently. How lame of him. And to the right is JP Pusilowski, who is repping Dak hard today. How's y'all's day been?
Pretty good. I just wrapped up my third or fourth meeting in the past 24 hours about this weekend, getting ready for football. I have to go back in to football tonight at the stadium. We're doing a run through, so it's really exciting. It looks awesome. Everything's kind of coming together. We had a long list of things to fix yesterday, and we're getting all those fixed, and then we'll have another list tonight. But it's really close, and it's going to go awesome.
JP, you mentioned you've been going since 8 a.m. today. Test or something, or just normal grind?
Working on this show.
Fair.
Yep.
Actually, I skipped all 4 classes today.
Respect.
Didn't feel like going to class.
He's committed to the grind, I guess.
So, yeah, I spent pretty much all the day working on this show.
I can't wait to hear what you brought then.
Yeah, I've got a lot.
That's
sick.
exciting.
Huge news we will have to address to lead off the show, as Tucker has mentioned. Braves have claimed Ha-Seong Kim off waivers. Huge get.
Former Padre
Padre was at the Rays. They waived him because they're cheap and he's been hurt and they don't want to pay his $16 million player option next season, assuming he opts in. The Braves have had shortstop woes this whole season, and so we picked him up, and in his first game hits a home run, which is the Braves' first home run from a shortstop this season. I'm excited. I'm hoping he picks up that player option and sticks with the team next season. But also, I do need us to keep losing and bettering that draft pick, because that's all that matters at this point.
He's got no reason to not sign.
He won't get that on the open market, I don't think. So he should really. I agree. I think he'll sign.
And he'd be,
So when you pick
he'd be
him
the
up-
everyday starter.
When you pick him up from waivers, you pick up that contract, right?
Yes.
It's not like you
Yes.
get to renegotiate.
He didn't
Cool.
clear waivers, and if he had cleared waivers,
Then he'd be a free agent.
yeah, he'd be a free agent. But he didn't clear.
Cool.
So very happy about that.
Yeah, he was a dog at San Diego 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that all of our unrelated news?
No, I mean I spilled Coke on myself right before 30 seconds before we went live, and that was a bad feeling. Not the way I wanted to kick off the podcast. You can't see it on camera because I'm kind of it's low and to the side, but drinking problems, man, and not alcoholic drinking problems. Just physically can't take a sip without spilling on myself. So that really, really hurts. But no, we're here to talk football, and so we can get into that now. We're going to start with the top 25, the fan top 25.
Yep.
Then hit the Arizona State, Mississippi State game. As always, we're always going to hit the state game. Then go through our college games of the week. Then our NFL games we're going to preview. And then we'll finish with JP's best bets. So let's get rolling. Sanders, you want to bring up the top 25?
Yeah, I'll start. We call it the People's Top 25. This is the top 25 that we all participate in, and then our viewers also participate in, like it says on the screen, and it's also in the description. Go to t25sports.com, and it's super easy to rank your top 25. It's right there on the front page. Do that. We shout out different users or different voters every week who have hot takes or things that we might disagree with or that everyone disagrees with, as we'll find out in a few minutes. I'm about to shout some of those guys out. But I just want to run through the top 25 real quick because it's another good one. Ohio State comes in at first, as they did in the AP. But I'm going to run through some of the highlights because there were some very hot takes out there. Andrew B has Georgia at 1, which I can't really fault him much because I have Penn State at 1. And so I can't be I can't believe you have Georgia at 1 because Ohio State is kind of the consensus number 1 right there. And so for me to start point fingers and be wow, that's just a terrible take, I have Penn State at 1. So we are both in the minority. I'm not going to call him out and say he's a bozo for that. It's one of my good friends. But that's a hot take. Duncan has Florida State at 9, and I didn't double check his ballot last week. I could do that real quick. I'm going to assume he did not have them ranked the week before. I don't think anyone had them ranked the week before.
It's a big riser.
Yeah, so jumping from unranked to 9th.
Yeah, he did not have them.
He did not have them ranked. So a big jump, unranked to top 10, which it's very much a reaction, potentially an overreaction. The season will play out, and we'll find out more. MF Waterer ranked Mississippi State. I don't think I mentioned it last week, but he has Mississippi State at 24. He had them at 25 last week. So he's really high on Mississippi State.
According to him, we got a top 25 matchup.
Yeah, we do have a big top 25 matchup coming this weekend. But if you listen to some of our other users, we don't, because Chuck March has Arizona State unranked for potentially the second week in a row. I didn't double check his week 1 ballot, but Chuck March is very low on the Sun Devils. His is a very bold ballot. I believe he's got Georgia Tech top 10. He has Arizona State unranked. He's got a lot of stuff in his ballot.
He did not have them ranked last week.
Yeah, so 2 weeks in a row unranked for the Sun Devils. So if you listen to our users, this is not a top 25 matchup because Mississippi State is top 25 and Arizona State is not. Chromie, you do need to work on your rankings. I'm interested to see where Houston falls after their week 1 game.
Congrats on finishing the MCAT as well, by the way, Chromie.
Oh,
I
Schubert.
know he took it this morning.
Yeah.
So
Houston at number 2, according to Chromie.
that would have made the hot takes list had you got it in pre-show.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? We'll give him a quick shout out. Chromie, whose ballot is yet to be in, has Houston at 2, but we know that's coming.
Huge matchup for Houston this week too. I believe they play Rice.
Yeah, that's a big game.
Yeah.
In-state Rebel.
Facts.
I told MF Waterer, I texted in our group chat today, I said, I will be shouting you on the show because last week he had Notre Dame at 20. He had him in the 20s.
23, I believe.
23, dropped him to 24 or 25 this week. And I wanted to shout him out because while we don't know where Notre Dame is, he was kind of the first out of the people in our ballots to be low on Notre Dame. And they lost, and so they could still be a top. Miami could be the best team in the country. Notre Dame could be the second best. It's week 1. We don't know, but he was early to that. So I told him I would shout him out. So that's his second shout out of this segment.
He just texted us, Notre Dame sucks. They're horrible. If they suck that much, why did you leave them in your rankings then?
Well, he did. He was the first to have them ranked low. So I shouted him out for that. That's kind of all. Anything stand out to y'all on the top 25?
Yeah, I don't think Utah is getting enough love.
That's a great point. I don't think I ranked them. That might have been a mistake by me.
They're not in our top 25 at all. I had them ranked. I had them as high as I had them at 20. I'm the highest on them. They're only 2 points behind getting into the top 25, but even at 25, I feel like it's too low. I think that's just a microcosm of no one watched that game because it was at 2 a.m. Eastern time, essentially, against UCLA. But there's a team that's going to rise as the weeks go on. Also, Tennessee not being ranked surprised me. They're in the same spot as Utah, right there with 19 votes. We ranked instead. Mississippi State fans ranked the school up north and Missouri ahead of the Tennessee Volunteers and Utah.
The Missouri love was very surprising for me because I get they beat up on Arkansas State or wherever they played, or Pine Bluff. I don't remember who it was.
Central Arkansas?
Central Arkansas, yeah. So, they won by a ton, but I'm surprised that the voters saw that and were like, yeah, let's jump them in the rankings over a Tennessee who, we don't think Syracuse is going to be great this year, but they're definitely a lot better than Central Arkansas. So, I agree with that.
And then my last one, Georgia Tech is on only half of our ballots, 4 out of 8, yet they're still the 20th team for us. So half of our fan base thinks Georgia Tech is terrible, and the other half are high enough on them, in fact, as high as number 7 in the country, to get them into the top 20. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Quick conference breakdown. The SEC has twice as many teams as the second best conference. They've got 10. We got 5 Big 10, 5 ACC, 4 Big 12, and an independent, and that's Notre Dame. So a lot of SEC love yet again. None of the voters saw Tennessee play due to Ohio State, Texas, and MSU. That's fair. Because a lot of the voters are state fans because that's kind of our friend group as state students and a former state student. So we were watching our 2 big games was Ohio State, Texas, and then State Southern. Tennessee did look good. Joey Aguilar looked good. So we may be – JP, how are we – quick vibe check. They looked good. What are your thoughts on our Tennessee TikTok where we kind of dogged on them and had them winning 7 or 8 games?
Well, 7 or 8 games is still fine. They haven't played an SEC opponent yet, so we don't really know how they stack up there. They'll host Georgia in 2 weeks, week 3. So that's really the early litmus test for them. But I think the biggest thing is they were just surprisingly – Joey Aguilar looked good at quarterback, looked like he had played in Josh Heupel's system. And you have to remember, in April, he didn't even think I'm sure he didn't even like necessarily know of the Tennessee Volunteers, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He had the thought of playing for that program was not on his mind whatsoever. He was a UCLA Bruin. So it's still too early to tell there personally until especially week 3 against Georgia, hosting Georgia. That's going to be a big game, and that will kind of tell us where they're actually going to look this year.
Yeah. If he looks good, it gives huge credence or credibility to the thought that Josh Heupel, almost anyone can play quarterback in his system.
Sure.
Not trying to completely downplay if Aguilar has a good year, but just like we've seen tons of guys perform well in that system, and then they go to the NFL or do something else, and it's just simply not there. I think it's a pretty simple system to learn, and so I think that kind of played a huge factor into Aguilar being ready to go week 1.
One other interesting thing, last week we had 13 teams appear on every ballot. Last week we had 13 teams appear on every ballot. This week it was 14. That was interesting. I kind of expect that number to go up the further we get into season.
Absolutely.
And the more everything kind of settles. So we did have less voters at this point this week. If you're watching, go vote. It's super fun, super easy. I just love getting to see what other people think. I love seeing Georgia Tech at top 10. I don't have them there. I love seeing Arizona State unranked. I don't have them there, but it's just kind of cool to see the different opinions all mixed together, and it spits out something that looks kind of like the AP Top 25, but you get to have a say in it as opposed to just screaming at the TV or your phone.
Yeah, real quick before we move on, I will say I was looking at the consensus rankings earlier, and I was like trying to look at the movement of teams, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone, it was like 0, like zero movement, no movement, like all the way down the list. Basically, I was like, oh my, like, is this right? Turns out I was looking at receiving first place votes column and not the movement column. So I was, no wonder no one was moving because only 2 or 3 teams received first place votes. So
yeah,
not my finest moment.
Probably 3. Penn State, Georgia, and Ohio State, if I had to guess. Yeah. I don't imagine anyone else got any.
And I think that was before Duncan had his, or Andrew B. had his ballot and it had Georgia first. So it was literally just 2 teams. But cool. That's it for that segment. We can move on to the Arizona State versus Mississippi State preview, a game that is happening in Starkville, which a town that I don't like, but this town has caught a lot of slander this week. So do y'all want to address any of the slander? You've been visiting Starkville your whole life, JP. I think you've come a ton throughout your childhood as well.
Yep.
And both y'all have lived here now for 4 years plus.
5.5 years. And I mean, I have family here. I spent like half of my childhood here with grandparents, aunts, and uncles. I love Starkville. I get that not everybody does love it. But yeah, some of the stuff that has been said it's been pretty funny because I know it's not true. Like the having to stay an hour 15 away because of casinos and hotels. Breaking news: casinos are illegal in Mississippi except for on water or on Indian reservations.
Yep.
And the closest Indian reservation is like 45 minutes away. So I don't know. I'm not saying that he couldn't find hotel, but I just think it's funny that was his reason. So. They're welcome to stay hour 15 away. I think that's pretty standard for teams to stay outside of town just so you don't get caught up in the...
only like 2 good hotels in Starkville, and those are mostly booked for the weekends.
I'm sure that they definitely would have had it booked pre because...
Yeah, but still, I think...
Unless their travel planner, like she dropped the ball or he dropped the ball.
Good save.
I think it's fine to not stay in Starkville. I think that's completely fine.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to make up a reason for it.
Every time this kind of thing happens, which it'll happen a couple times a year, I just love the unity we see between Rebels and Bulldogs backing up the state of Mississippi. And that was awesome. That was something that happened again this week with much of the Rebel Twitter accounts backing up and joining together with state Twitter accounts to kind of tear apart Mr. Kinney's words from earlier this week and then the other words that came from Arizona State fans. No, I love Starkville. I've been coming here since I was a year old. My dad was a state grad, and Starkville is one of those towns that I think it's one of the perfect college towns. I love. It's not expansive. It's not city-like at all. You're literally in the middle of nowhere. It's only you. It's only the residents of the town. It's only college students. When we have a game day, the population of the city doubles. When we have a baseball game day, it triples. So it's something that's beautiful about this town. Is there a ton of things to do? Absolutely not. That's kind of been a problem forever, but it's a hidden beauty, and it's something I completely understand if you don't like it.
I agree.
That there's many reasons to not like it, but to just straight up lie about it is completely uncalled for, and there's no reason to do it. So Kenny's in for a rude awakening, and I love that it has really kind of turned this week into a big kind of hate week against the two of these teams, and now Saturday becomes a real big test for both the Bulldogs and the Sun Devils for this year.
Sure. So let's get into Saturday then. The game's at 6:30.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a night game, one of the few Starkville will see this season, possibly the biggest they'll see this season. I expect the Egg Bowl to be a night game, I guess.
No, it's a noon kickoff on Friday.
Dang, that kind of hurts a little bit.
Yep.
So this very well could be the biggest night game Starkville sees all season.
Yeah, barring a win and we get Tennessee in the flex, we get that at night.
Sure.
It
Sure.
will be the biggest night game and the biggest game.
But expectations are high. State's not lost yet, so there's still a lot of optimism around what could happen with this program. I'm going to let y'all take it from here, though. This is y'all's team. This is kind of y'all's rodeo. What do y'all expect from this weekend? What do y'all need to see, key points for the game, stuff like that?
Well, with what has all have occurred this week and the kind of magnitude that's been put on this game and the comments that have come from all walks of life on the internet, I went to look and I just wanted I wanted to think back on my time here at State, and I was trying to remember if there was a game that we hosted that I felt holds or held more meaning to the future of this program than this Saturday against the Sun Devils. And I thought of 3 examples personally. Egg Bowl, I think, is always kind of in that argument. But winning the Egg Bowl or losing the Egg Bowl doesn't necessarily mean that the program is on the upswing. It's winning big games. And there were 3 specific examples. So there's 2021, my freshman year. Mississippi State hosted Alabama, and Bryce Young. We were 17.5-point dogs in that game. The other example was 2022 when Stetson Bennett, the number 1 team in the country, Georgia, came to town, and we hosted Georgia. We were 16.5-point dogs. And then 2023, SEC Nation, Zach Arnett, and the LSU Tigers come to town. We were 9.5-point underdogs. The spread for this game is 6.5. And so for me, this feels like out of those 3 games, those felt like if we had won those games, it could change the future of the program. This one is the one that is the closest, at least from a Vegas look. And so for me, Saturday is a must-win for the Bulldogs. It is a must-win for the future of the program. It's a must-win for Jeff Lebby, and it could really springboard we could win 4 games this year. But winning that game on Saturday, I think, would help the buzz in this program so much. And so Saturday now becomes a huge pressure point for the fan base. And that is not something that we deal well with. And so I'm really intrigued to see how that will go. If inevitably we lose, which we're favored to lose on Saturday, I'm very curious to see how I would feel, how the fan base would feel, how our team will feel. And so Saturday is, I think, the biggest game that this campus has had since I've been a student at State in my 5 years.
Yeah.
Agree, disagree?
No, I would definitely agree. I will say I think that even if we lose this game, this season could still hold a lot of power as far as the turnaround goes. I think that even if we lose this game, 4 wins, which doubles our win total from last year, and an SEC win are still on the table. And while that wouldn't hold quite the same weight as a top 10 win, I don't think that this is like necessarily a do or die game where it's like if we lose this game, like we got to start thinking long-term changes. Like I think that this game, now if we do win this game, you are right. It does springboard. And it's like, well, now we're talking like, well, is 5 wins on the table? Like, are we looking at 4 out of conference in a SEC game? Are we looking at 4 out of conference in 2 SEC? Are we going to get to a bowl? So this does really set up or determine what the floor for the season is. So I think that is really important. And I would definitely agree that, like, as far as in the history of, like, our school, like, this is a huge game. And Tucker brings up a great point. 2019 Egg Bowl was a really important game. Was that Piss and Miss?
Yes.
That's what I thought. That was
hype.
Yes, that was a fantastic game, and the way we won that. I think that kind of, like, gave us confidence going into year or that was the Leach era. That was the end of the Moorhead era.
Yep.
So I think that was kind of what propelled us, and we found some success under Leach, getting to 8 or 9 wins one year. So I do think that this isn't a very important game. I wouldn't say it's a must-win game, but I do think it's an important game.
Getting into the actual game itself. Okay, so Arizona State last week played Northern Arizona. They won pretty resoundingly, 19-38. But I'd argue the game was it's actually a lot closer than the score looked. Northern Arizona had 2 red zone field goals, and they were also stopped inside the 5, turnover on downs. So they very easily could have scored 35 points, and this kind of looks like the Kansas State-North Dakota game very quickly, but that's not what ended up happening. Arizona State ended up winning pretty resoundingly from a score perspective. Sam Leavitt, the draft prospect, completed just 2 passes to a non-Jordan Tyson receiver last week. He was 25 for 39, 257, 2 touchdowns, a pick, which was a terrible pick, 7 carries, 73 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, including a 52-yard running strike. And then Kyson Brown and Raleek Brown, which they were not starting the transfer running back, Kane Udo, from Army. Instead, they went with Kyson Brown and Raleek Brown. Kyson Brown had 7 carries, 73 yards, 6 catches, and 72 yards. And then Raleek Brown had 5 catches, 38 yards, a touchdown, and then 3 catches as well. Jordan Tyson was unbelievable. I think you could just take the film from this game, and that would be all the film you need this year to say that's a top 10 pick in the draft. He had every kind of catch you needed. He had a back shoulder fade. He had a catch on a little drag route and take it 25 yards. He had in-cut routes, out-cut routes, goal line fade. He was terrific the entire game. 12 catches, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Sam Leavitt just continued to throw this guy the ball the entire game, which I would too. Jordan Tyson is prolific. Arizona State also kind of some fun facts from the game. They pulled out a fake punt in the first quarter, up 7.
Really caught me off guard.
Which I think that's good news for this week, that they're not going to pull out a fake punt this week, I would assume. They also had 2 50-yard plays.
They, reverse psychology or whatever it is, They think we're not because we did it last week. So
I think at least now we'll be ready for it. We've seen one.
No, I agree. I'm just giving you a hard time.
They had 2 50-yard plus plays called back due to penalty. One was a touchdown. One was stopped inside the 10-yard line. Both were called back due to penalties, and they were bad with penalties just like we were last week. They had 12 for 93 yards. And then their right tackle, who is a top 3-round draft prospect, Max, who I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I'll butcher it, was arguably terrible. And now I don't have the all-22 film, so I couldn't tell you if this was fully on him. But there were 3 free rushes from the right side of the line where it was just him, the right tackle, no tight end help or anything. And there was just a guy that free rushed and got to Sam Leavitt immediately. Sam was eaten alive, really. Last week he took big hits, about 8 of them. And that's kind of a poor sign for the Sun Devils in the future of this season. If they can't, keep him upright against Northern Arizona, how are they going to look even against a Mississippi State defensive line, which performed really well last week? So that's kind of a concern, and that's a positive to look for if you're a State fan. But the defense for Arizona State was flying, tons of energy. Anytime they made a tackle, like literally anytime they made a tackle, it was whoever made the tackle was going like this, just so ecstatic for whatever reason. First game of the season, jitters, I get it. But they were so much energy on that defense, and that's a concern because defense travels. That's something that it doesn't matter, the road environment, because the crowd is – we're not ringing our cowbells. We're not supposed to be, at least when the offense is on the field. We will at times. And so you can communicate very easily when you're on the road. And so defense travels. And if they're playing with that kind of energy week 1 against an FCS opponent, that could be troubling for this week, especially with a team like us in State where we need the offense to be productive. In terms of players playing this week for State, there's no changes to last week. The depth chart is exactly the same. So expect everyone playing in those spots. I think Whitson will get a few more snaps than he did last week with how he played and he being a SEC co-defensive player of the week. And then Blake Steen is kind of a trouble point, and that was kind of a lot of State fans ripping that apart, but he's going to start at right tackle, so that's a potential trouble point to look for this weekend. Of course, Kyle Ferry is still going to be the kicker after his 55-yarder in school record last week, and he may be a big point in this game. In terms of home points, which for the Bulldogs, these are my key points to the game. We've got to limit the explosive plays. Last week, Arizona State had 9 plays of 19 yards or more, and I used 19 instead of 20 because they literally had 4 plays that were 19 yards. So 9 plays of basically 20 yards or more. They were very explosive. It was against an FCS opponent, but that is something that has troubled the Bulldogs in recent years. Defensively, it's just giving up big explosive plays. We only gave up 3 versus Southern Miss, and one of them was in the fourth quarter when our backups were in defensively. So positive sign, but we're going to have to limit that, especially with the firepower that this offense has in the Sun Devils. My next key point, and this is always going to be a key point when we're at home, is we got to keep the crowd in the game. We have to keep the cowbells ringing. We have to keep the student section full. That's been a huge problem since I've been a student here at State, is we've gotten to the fourth quarter and we're down 14 points instead of 3. And so the student section is emptied out, and the fan base is ready to go home, and people are already leaving the building. And then that's when we start making our comeback, but we can't, really play off our huge, crowd environment if the crowd isn't there anymore. So we have to keep the crowd literally in the game this weekend. We cannot get blown out. We can't be down 17 early in the second quarter. We need to keep this game close to give us a chance going to the fourth quarter. This one travels over from last week with Braylon Braxton. Now it's Sam Levitt. Cannot let Sam Levitt out-physical us. He was prolific on the ground last week against Northern Arizona, including a 52-yard strike. He was good on the ground against us last year on the running as quarterback, and he is, I think, the key to the game for Arizona State. His ability to run, create explosive plays is a potential challenge for us, and we're going to have to keep that in check somehow. Penalties is another one. It's a key point for both teams. We last week had 14 for 119 yards, and they had 12 for 93 yards. So that's another key point. You got any key points for the Bulldogs, you two?
Yeah, I would say it kind of goes off what you said about keeping the crowd in the game, but scoring early, going out and maybe you if they get the ball, you get a stop and you go down and score, or you go down and score and get a stop. Early energy, early oh, we're in this game, as opposed to they come out and go, 3 plays, 75 yards, touchdown, and it's just immediately the air is let out of the building, or 6 minutes, 75. You've got to do something early that shows everyone in the stands and everyone watching on TV that we're kind of not necessarily back because it's the first play or the first quarter, but just something to kind of show that we are there to play, because I feel a lot of times in games last year it was pretty clear early on that we were not going to be in it. So early on, it needs to be clear that we are in the game. Another big thing is the trenches on both sides of the ball. We're going to be going up against an offensive line that, like you said, gave up a lot of hits last week. We performed really well on defensive line. We had multiple players make PFF teams of the week, SEC, all across the country. It was a very good performance by our D-line last week against a patchwork Southern Miss O-line. So we really need to see how that performs against a P4 O-line, against a top 12 O-line, or the team that's top 12 in the country. We got to see how they perform. Got to get to Levitt, make some hits. And then I think that it's going to be most important there, because as far as the secondary goes, our secondary played well last week, and we are going to be shadowing Jordan Tyson the entire game. 2 guys, safety help. He's going to be the main priority. You take him away, and like you said, Levitt completed 2 passes to wide receivers not named Jordan Tyson last week. So if you take Jordan Tyson out of the game, you make Levitt look elsewhere, that's a big win. And then it also opens up opportunities for that D-line to either get to guys in the backfield, running back, quarterback, get stops at the line. The trenches are going to be very important. On the offensive line, we have got to be better than last week. We are playing a Big 12 defensive line. We are not playing an SEC defensive line. These are not 5 stars, blue chip, top 3 prospects, top first-round prospects. They are good, but they are not what we're going to be facing for the rest of the season. We have got to clean up the penalties. We had way too many last week. Mm-hmm. And even the holding ones, I'm not going to say I get, because those happen, but the lineup ones,
illegal
formations. Thank you. That's
3 in a game is crazy,
and that's maybe first week jitters, learning the system,
Yeah,
and that is
how much motion there is.
The reality of transfers and everything. But that's something up that we hope to clean in week 2. Right, you've got home field, and like you said, the crowd should be quiet when we are on offense. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are screaming while we're trying to call audibles and point out blitzers and stuff, and people are just ringing cowbells. Very low IQ fans that I've seen. Us everywhere has them, but when you have a cowbell, it kind of like amplifies.
Makes them easy to find them. When
it's
ringing
really
the
easy to find the fans who are ringing cowbells on offense when we're trying to figure stuff out. But cleaning that up, cleaning up the illegal formations, which I believe we can do. I tweeted last week, I said we should get the sliding mitts that baseball players wear and make our entire offensive line wear them so they can't grab. They can just like push and block. Clean that up. So those are the trenches, and then I forget what my other point was. Trenches. Oh, and then be in the game early are like my biggest 2 points going into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to toss one thing out there real quick.
Sure.
This is the key to, not even just the key to this game, but as we're expecting State to be better this year as a whole and moving forward is, you mentioned Jordan Tyson, right? And in games last year, there just was no hope of stopping Jordan Tyson. Even if you tried to scheme and game plan for him, the secondary was so bad that it wouldn't matter. So that's one thing I want to see is if you do scheme for their top guy, can you slow him down, right?
Sure.
Right.
But then the flip side of that is I also need to see that y'all can stop the other guys too, because it's all good and well if you can stop Jordan Tyson, but y'all have the depth and can y'all be cohesive and work well enough to then, not get torched by the second option from the slot who's just going crazy across the middle because you're shadowing Jordan Tyson because he's a dog, and like I said last year, any dog just feasted against y'all. So I really want to see y'all slow that down.
For all we know, we were scheming to stop the top guys last year, and it just wasn't working. That's that's kind of the reality. Is the defense, the secondary last year struggled, leaving guys wide open. It was very hard to watch. I think it's not going to be the case this year. I don't think we're going to be fantastic because the secondary is still not like SEC caliber. It's not elite, but it is going to be a lot better than last year. And I do think that we now have the depth and the talent that if we look at a guy and said he's not going to kill us, he's not going to kill us. Someone else might. That might happen. But I think we can take the one guy that we want to out of the game.
I expect y'all to be able to, but it's just something I want to see with my own eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, this is X's and O's wise, but I'm curious to see when we play man coverage, how do we at least put in a quarterback spy? Because that is where Sam Levitt got a ton of his rushes last week for big games. Was Northern Arizona was in man coverage, and he was able to get out of the pocket, and then everyone is chasing their man downfield. That's how he scored a 53-yard touchdown last week. Was because Northern Arizona was in man coverage. That's one of the ways to stop one receiver is to go man coverage and put a safety over the top. And so I'm curious to see how that will look that's X's and O's for you right there. I personally would put in a spy, but even with our linebacker history, putting in a spy doesn't necessarily matter because Jet Johnson isn't necessarily going to track down a quarterback, and I don't think he would have tracked down Sam Levitt either. So I'm interested to see how we'll do, especially in the spy. Like Nick Mitchell is going to have to be big there, and then potentially a guy like Sakari Tillman, one of our other corners. Brandon Jennings might even spy at times too, playing the jack. For Arizona State, if they were these are their keys to beating us. Personally, stop the run is one of them. State ran for 186 yards last week, which is very, very good, and I think we're going to run the ball a good amount this week as well, at least attempt to. So if you can stop the run and force Shapen into 3rd and 7s, I think that's just going to help, especially with the offensive line questions that State has. Jordan Tyson Cook, pretty simple right there. Just keep feeding the guy the ball. He was unbelievable last week, as I said. Protect Sam Levitt. Also, as I said, he was hit 7-ish times last week, and they were not just little light hits. They were big hits. He got manhandled on 2 of them. There was a late roughing the passer on one of them. He was really taking some shots, and if you can protect him and keep him upright, he's going to give you a chance to win this game. Penalties, as I said, and then finally back up the talk. That's another thing. I'm really curious to see if Arizona State wins, which they are favored to do. What does Kenny Dillingham say in the press conference, and how that will how will people react to that? You got to back up the talk. I'm curious to see if there will be talking as well on the field. Is there going to be bad blood in this game? I hope so.
I also hope so.
Personally, I think our best days of state is when those kinds of things happen.
Yeah.
When we're not afraid of the other team, and you think of the famous clip of holding the chain out, Jeffrey Simmons, and then you had the LSU game with Nick Fitzgerald, where we were also chirping them pregame, and those I think are the best state defenses and state teams, and I think this is a unique advantage we're going to have.
Yeah.
I hope we take advantage of that. I certainly in the crowd will not be holding back my words for Mr. Kinney either during the game. So for Arizona State, you got to back up the talk. If you're going to talk poor about the great city, really town of Starkville, then go out there and beat us on the field and beat us well. Predictions for the game.
I was just going to, Tucker makes two really good points that I wanted to hit up. Kelly Jones, a cornerback. I was watching State's game on the small TV last week because we had Texas-Ohio State, so I didn't see Kelly Jones as much as Tucker did, I don't imagine, but he was talking about him in our review show on Tuesday or Sunday. He's talking about him again on the show today, saying he's got a chance to shoot up draft boards. If he can cover Jordan Tyson and cover him well, when you cover a potential top 10 or first-round draft pick, like that does kind of put your name on the map as far as NFL draft prospects go. That's a really good opportunity for him. And then I was wondering the same thing, Tucker. Could Isaac Smith be the spy at the Sam? I could definitely see it. He's got the athletic profile to where he's fast enough that he could chase down Levitt, and then also big enough that he can bring him to the ground.
That makes sense. I missed that. I should have mentioned that. That would make the most sense from an X's and O's standpoint too, is putting Isaac in that spot. But I expect Isaac to be flying all over the field in different areas too.
Yeah. Could
so I don't think he would.
It's hard to
necessarily be put in just that spot for the entire game.
It's hard to want to restrain your best defensive player.
I was kind of wondering, is this a week where we get to see Tony Mitchell?
I'd hope so.
Because then maybe we see Isaac Smith and Tony Mitchell on the field at the same time. Tony playing the spy and Isaac kind of flying around doing his thing. That's a possibility. Tony Mitchell's a very talented guy, former Alabama player. I would love to see him on the field. I've been very high on him since his commit out of East Mississippi Community College. We'll see how that goes, but stopping Levitt will be very important.
Yep.
Predictions.
The total is 59.5. State, of course, scored 34 last week, and then Arizona State scored 39. So the Vegas expects this to be a high-scoring shootout, which would be fun. I think that would be really fun, especially with our LED lights. Getting to see that go off for a bunch of touchdowns for the entire game would be cool. I don't really have a lean on, but the spread is 6.5, favored towards Arizona State. I'm taking the Dogs to cover and win. I think we're going to win outright. I think Saturday just kind of has too much of that momentum, and as much as I like to hype on expectations with this program and this university, I think this is one of those games that we get it done because Arizona State is not Alabama, LSU, Georgia. Those games we're not expected to win at all. And while we're not expected to win this game, I think we have to, and I think we will.
Yeah, sure. I'm right there with you. I've been bouncing back and forth. I'm definitely going to have us to cover. I'm going to pick us to win. I feel really good. Very excited about this team. I'm potentially the most excited since I've been Leach's last year. I don't know. I just
sure.
And maybe not even about a game. I feel very excited about this game, and like you made the point earlier, how much it means for the rest of the season and the football program in general. I just feel really excited about where we could find ourselves in 72 hours.
Yeah,
something like that.
I actually think the defenses are going to play a huge part in this game. So if I was a betting man, I'd take the under here. Sure. I have Arizona State winning 27-24 in a very close one. They get a scare in Starkville, but they managed to pull it out. But I do think this is a game where it's State was that competitive that people will be talking about it, and it will continue to, build hope, even if they don't get the result they want. So,
imagine we get a walk-off Kyle Ferry field goal game winner.
I'm telling you, I mentioned him because I think he will play a factor in this game at some point.
I agree. I think that's a great take.
So, I would love to see it.
Next up, we have our Technical Foul Game of the Week. This is the game that the fans chose.
Can we call it the Tucker Medlin Game of the Week?
The Tucker Medlin game. So if you do not follow us on Twitter, go follow us on Twitter. We will be tweeting every week asking. We cover 5 games as our plan. 5 college games every week. The state game, 3 games that we select, and then a game that you select. And Tucker is the only person who responded to the tweet. Thank you, Tucker. Actually, no, your brother-in-law responded, but he picked a game.
He just doesn't know how to read. He picked a game we already had on the
very
docket.
clearly explained, we are covering these 4 games. We want y'all to pick the last one. And he picked one of the games that we listed we were covering. So thank you, Tucker. We're covering this game for you.
Good try, Ryan. Try again next week, okay?
But this is the Technical Foul Game of the Week, the fans, and then the Tucker Medlin Game of the Week.
Yeah.
So
cool. The game of the week is Baylor at SMU, though. Baylor's looking to bounce back after a rough week 1 showing at home against Auburn, where they just got out physical. They got bullied. SMU played a weaker opponent, so they just kind of ran away with it.
I don't know. Texas A&M is pretty good, apparently.
Yeah, it wasn't Texas A&M Commerce.
I think it was East Texas A&M,
East
right?
Texas A&M. Yeah, because they changed their name. They're no longer Texas A&M Commerce. We were talking about that last week, I think.
I thought Corpus Christi was the one that changed. Was it Commerce?
Yeah, Commerce changed East Texas A&M. Texas A&M Corpus Christi is still a thing.
Okay, cool.
There's a West Texas A&M. We got options.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about, I didn't realize that Texas A&M Commerce was named that because they were in Commerce, Texas.
I didn't know that.
They were named that because it was like a business school, like a trade
that makes
school.
a lot more sense.
But
to
no,
me.
it's in Commerce, Texas. But they've now changed the name to East Texas A&M. They're no longer Texas A&M.
Chromie has
Commerce.
just suggested Houston versus Rice for final game preview on Twitter.
A little late,
And maybe we can do a spontaneous minute or 2 at the end of
I
our
have
college
nothing
football.
on Houston versus Rice. Sorry.
It's who's the quarterback there now? Is it Wigman?
Connor Week.
I will say.
All right, that's a Heisman game right there.
Rice beat the I think the American one of the American favorites or something like that last week. They beat
did.
Louisiana.
Let's if we get too rambly, we're gonna have to come back and start this preview over. So let's continue Baylor at SMU.
Sure.
Before we get too distracted.
So SMU beat East Texas A&M. Not a hard game. So this becomes their first test of the season as we get to see kind of how their new team shapes up. They lost pieces, but Kevin Jennings is back, and he'll go up against Sawyer Robertson, Baylor's quarterback. Thoughts on the game? Initial points?
I think the biggest thing for Baylor is going to be they got absolutely hosed last week by Jackson Arnold and Auburn by the QB run. They just could not stop it. I don't know if that was a game plan thing or a depth thing, but this week going up against Kevin Jennings, who is also a rushing quarterback, he's a big threat with his legs. They have to figure out how to stop that, or else this game is going to go much the same way as the Auburn game, where I believe Sawyer Robertson and that offense are going to put up points because that's a good offense, but they're just not going to be able to they're not going to be able to score every drive to hang with that SMU offense after all the QB run.
Yeah, the QB run, it was not even like it was designed quarterback runs. Now, the dagger of the game was a quarterback design run for Jackson Arnold. But outside of that, it was literally Arnold dropping back and then scrambling. So they were just poor in their containing, poor in their spy coverage, which there was not a lot of it, to be honest. They were poor and just they played a ton of man for whatever reason, which I did not understand. Given Jackson Arnold's throwing ability, I would just play zone and then converge on him when he tries to run. They played a ton of man, and so Jackson got a ton of carries for big gains because when you're in man coverage, you're chasing your man. You don't see the quarterback running. Versus zone, you're looking at the quarterback the whole time. So I thought that was a problem. And then the other problem for me was just kind of missed chances, and then they were too aggressive last week.
On defense?
Offensively. For missed chances, it was in the first quarter, they have a field goal in the red zone, specifically inside the 15, and then a 4th and goal that they don't convert. That's 11 points right there, which would that's right, has them right there in the game. And then with the aggressiveness, they had 2 4th down touchdowns, which obviously helped them a ton, but it's just really aggressive, and it's not necessarily a recipe for success to have to be scoring on 4th down. They had a big one in the game on 4th and 9. They were 3 for 6 on 4th down in the game, and the ones they were going for outside of the 4th and goal were all 3 to 5 to 7 yards. So just very aggressive, and the time of the game didn't necessarily make sense. So I was curious there with Dave Aranda and their management of that. And then my biggest point for really Baylor this week in terms of winning this game is they have to win the momentum battle, and they were bad at that last week. In the fourth quarter, they cut the game to 7, and they give up a kick return touchdown. And then they go down, drive down the field, score on 4th down, cut the game to 7 again, give up 2 third downs, including a 3rd and 8 pass from Jackson Arnold, and then the dagger touchdown on 4th down. So it's just like unable to kind of convert and carry on momentum, especially the one cutting it to 7 with about 12 minutes left in the fourth, and you give up a kick return touchdown. That kind of thing just can't happen for this team to be successful, and that's what cost them last week. So for Baylor, I think you have to win the momentum battle against a SMU team that returns a lot of guys from a playoff team last year.
I think it's a great point. Do y'all expect Baylor's defense to bounce back, especially their rushing defense?
I do. I just don't know how you can walk away from that game last week and not make the changes necessary. So, and I do think a lot of it was not talent or depth based, like we talked earlier about Mississippi State's defense last year, but I think it was more scheme and game plan based. So I think they make the necessary adjustments.
I mean, they're going to have to, because Kevin Jennings is more than capable as a runner. He loves to extend plays with his run, with his legs, and then also they'll scheme up design quarterback runs for him too, so they don't clean it up. They could be in for another long game. But I agree. I think a lot of it was scheme, and kind of once the ball got rolling, they couldn't stop it. So hopefully they can kind of get out in front of it this week, and it doesn't become as big of an issue.
Yeah, I think it also is important for SMU because this is a big out-of-conference game. I was really impressed with their out-of-conference schedule, scheduling 2 Big 12 teams and then playing a 9-game ACC schedule.
Yeah.
Is that right?
They'll play TCU.
Yes, or 8-game
at some
ACC
point this
schedule.
season.
Yeah, they play TCU in 2
Baylor.
weeks.
And if I'm not mistaken, they play a Big 10 team. I need to double check.
I don't think that's right. I've got their schedule up right now. I think they play They play the 8-game ACC schedule and then 2 Big 12 teams, which I think that's a pretty tough out-of-conference schedule. You don't see a whole lot of teams scheduled to P4 out-of-conference opponents. So, but that means that this game is important to win because you're gonna you wear yourself out more playing a P4 team because you play your starters the full 60 minutes. You don't get to bring in your guys for the last quarter, so you need to win this game. You don't want to take a loss early and then still have 9 games ahead of you against Power 4 opponents. So this is a big game for SMU as far as long term of the season goes. They want to compete for the playoffs again, and you don't want to start the season 1-1 when you're in the ACC, and it's going to be a challenge to win that ACC championship.
And I don't expect Baylor to be bad this year. Honestly, I thought they were in that game, and like I said, they just didn't capitalize on momentum in a home crowd environment against Auburn. They had every possibility to win that game going down the stretch, and then to give up big plays. So resume-wise, I think it will help SMU a ton. For SMU, my biggest point for them is you got to protect the football. They had 3 turnovers last week, 2 fumbles and a pick. Kevin Jennings had 2 turnovers himself, and that's against East Texas A&M. So that's troubling. Now, Baylor did not turn over Auburn last week, if I'm not mistaken. But there were not a ton of passing attempts out of Jackson Arnold in that game. And he was just tight with the football when he was running. So SMU needs to protect the football, especially at home. And with how good this Baylor offense is, giving them a free possession just kind of puts you behind the 8 ball, and it keeps making you need to match points. So you don't want to give the ball up and score 0 points on a possession. So they need to protect the ball this week.
I think that's a great point. And that's not even just week 1 issues from Kevin Jennings. It's kind of even last season as good as he was. Think about the Duke game where he had a ton of interceptions.
Mm-hmm. They were -7 turnovers in that game, and they still won.
Yeah, they did still win, but he does not protect the football as you would always want him to, which part of that is the way he plays, and so it's a give and take of do you take the big plays he makes because he's risky, but then you have to live with the downside of that. I want to flip it now and talk about Baylor's offense because I do actually think they looked very good week 1. The stalled drives hurt them and the turnovers on downs, but they moved the ball really well. Sawyer Robertson, I think, passed really well, showed good chemistry with the newer wide receiver unit. And so do we think SMU's defensive back unit is going to be able to slow them down? Because they're going to have to. Or we really are going to be in a shootout like Tucker was saying in the chat.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to stop them. I expect Baylor they scored, I don't know off the top of my head, it was a good bit. I expect them to score
Against
30.
Auburn, they scored 24.
Yeah, I expect them to score 30.
But again, like I
They
said,
moved the ball really well.
They left 11 points on the board, too.
I've got them scoring 30-plus points. Maybe we get into a real old-fashioned, 49-45 game. But I do expect a lot of points to be put on the board by Baylor.
I just really liked how the weapons looked, too, against an Auburn defense. And Auburn might go 5-7 this year again. But it's still SEC players. And Michael Trigg is rising up my draft board. He was insane, the big tight end last week for Baylor, and I think he'll be really, really good again this year. 6'4". I think he was like the 4th tight end according to PFF right now. But that's a guy that's like a 2nd-round pick for me right now. He was really, really productive, and I think he'll be productive again this week and going forward this season. And the receivers were good. Cole Wilson had a great day. Kobe Prentice had a big touchdown, and hopefully they can kind of get him more involved, the former Alabama product. I agree with y'all as well. The offense, I think, just showed last week that they're really, really good. And I said at the beginning I didn't like their aggressiveness, but being that aggressive is going to help you score more points. And I think it can play to your advantage some weeks, and it may play to their advantage this week against SMU.
I agree. I do think SMU's has not the best defensive back unit, but it is a pretty opportunistic group. Deuce Harmon's back there, Aggie legend, Gig'em. Y'all probably remember him. I believe, I don't remember his first name. Ducking, though, caught an 87-yard touchdown pass against him here in 2022 in the blowout game y'all had here against A&M. He is only 5'9", but he's got a lot of heart. And then Isaiah Nokobia is a strong safety for them. That's a good player. So I think they're opportunistic. They're going to look to force turnovers on their own. But it's not the most complete deep unit, so I think Baylor, can handle that group, and it is going to become a bit of a shootout. Score predictions, we all think it's going to be a shootout, but the spread is 2.5. SMU's favored, basically because they're at home is what it comes down to. It's a pretty even game.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to – I really think the spread makes it seem like it's – I see it being one of those high-scoring games. It comes down to who gets stopped and has to take a field goal instead of a touchdown. So I was joking earlier, but like a 45-42, that feels like a pretty – reasonable prediction given the spread being 3 points. I think it's going to be two very evenly matched offenses, or at least a very high-powered Baylor offense and then an SMU offense that takes advantage of some of the weaknesses we saw from Baylor last week. SMU is favored by 2.5 at home. I'm going to take them to cover that. I think they win by, like I said, 3, or maybe a touchdown, but I think they cover that and get the win.
I'm taking Baylor to win and cover. I think this being a noon kickoff plays to Baylor's advantage this week, not having to play any kind of necessarily a big crowd at least. And then it's on the CW network.
I was wondering about that. It's not great.
Not great at all.
Exposure.
I just think Baylor's better, and I don't trust SMU and their turnover problems, and I think a turnover will be the difference in the game.
As a team where we are currently struggling with brand exposure in college football 26, going into year 5, I feel sorry for SMU and Baylor and the fact that they're being pushed to the CW network. It makes recruiting very, very challenging.
Yeah, I would not want to play on
We
the
landed
CW
our first
network.
5-star, though. So.
Heck yeah.
Because no one else offered them. So, how does that work? But anyway, I'm going to take Baylor as well. I think they're the better team. They just, once again, the wheels kind of got out from underneath them in week 1, and it just kind of fell apart. But I think they regroup. I think they're more talented as a whole than SMU, and assuming they can limit Kevin Jennings even just a little bit, they'll get this win on the road, and it'll be a nice bounce back thing and kind of get their season headed back in the right direction.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see I'm pulling up Baylor's football schedule, because if they don't stop the QB run again, I'm trying to see who else they have on the schedule. Do we start to get... They've got Sam Leavitt and Arizona State still on the schedule. They have Avery Johnson and Kansas State still on the schedule. They've got Utah and
Devon Dampier.
Devon, I believe. I heard Josh Pate say Devon. So
Mr. Dampier.
Yeah, Mr. Dampier, the quarterback. That Noah Fafita still on the schedule. So if they get hurt and burned by the quarterback run again, it starts to become a concerning pattern on that defensive side of the ball, and you're looking at 3-4 hard matchups down the road in the Big 12. So that'll be something I'm long term. How do they handle that QB run? Get the stop. That was your Technical Foul Game of the Week, brought to you by Tucker Medlin.
Shout out Tucker.
Follow us on Twitter, and we put that out there. and you get to say what you want the game of the week to be. But moving on, we got 3 games that we have selected
as the biggest of the week, and we will start with Michigan at Oklahoma. The first big test for both these teams. Both of them kind of played a little patsy week 1, a little get-right game. I believe Michigan played New Mexico. Now, they did get one of the craziest trick plays scored on them, where you snap it between the legs to the running back, and it takes a bounce, and then he throws it over the line.
That was sick.
Not the best team, and Oklahoma didn't play a great team either, but they both took care of business. And now we get to a week 2 matchup in Norman, where we're kind of waiting to see how good these teams truly are. There's a lot of hype around these teams being improved from last year. Both of them finished at 6-7 wins last season, both disappointing seasons last year for them. But yeah, we've heard all about this step forward from both these teams. So here's a nice little litmus test to kind of gauge them by in a little night game in Norman. So thoughts on this game? What do you expect to see?
I think it's going to be very important to see what that Michigan run game looks like and how much do they need from Bryce Underwood. Justice Haynes was incredible last week. 16 carries, 159 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Ran all over New Mexico. And so I think Oklahoma, their first job is going to be stopping that run game. And then if they can take away that run game, it really comes down to what does a freshman quarterback starting a second game in college on the road in an SEC environment, what does that look like? I think that's going to be an important key. And then on the other side of the ball, John Mateer, I was high on him. Josh Bate talked me into him with the Heisman pick and everything. He looked incredible at Washington State, looked really good last week, going 30 for 37, 392 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Didn't use the run game a whole lot, but didn't necessarily need to.
Yeah, he didn't have to.
I'm interested to see what that looks like. So this Michigan defense, as always, is going to be good because it's Michigan and they just crank out defensive talent and very good defenses. Unlike we had a whole miscommunication in our Michigan preview where someone thought I said the Michigan defensive line was bad because I said they only had 2 4-star recruits on the D-line in the past 2 years. And then I was like, that's my point, is y'all have 4 4-star plus defensive linemen in the last 2. Anyway, they're going to be fantastic on defense. So how does that Oklahoma offense look? Do the wide receivers, they had issues last year, injuries. Do they continue to play well? They played well last week. Deion Burke, 7 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. How does that Oklahoma offense look against a really good, or what I expect to be a really good Michigan defense?
Yeah, for Oklahoma, I think the consistency is the biggest one for me. Last week, and this is against Illinois State, which I get it, first week with John Mateer, quarterback, week in this new system with the offensive coordinator coming from Washington State to Oklahoma as well. But against Illinois State, they were just inconsistent offensively. To start the game, they go 3 and out, and then they fumble. They score 3 straight touchdowns. Come into the second half, you go 3 and out, throw a pick, touchdown, turnover and downs, touchdown. Against Michigan, I just want to see consistent drives, and it's going to be harder to do it, but I need to see consistency offensively in this second week, and I think that'll be the key to the game for the Sooners, if they can hold up consistently offensively. And then on the Michigan side, for me, it's Bryce Underwood. Him and Justice Haynes are the keys to the game offensively for Michigan. Their defense, I think, is going to have to play really, really well. If their defense can hold Oklahoma to 14 points and Bryce Underwood can put 3 drives together and score 17, then obviously they're going to win the game because they scored 3 more points than Oklahoma. But I just want to see Bryce Underwood play under those bright lights. He's number 1 overall recruit in the nation, number 1 overall quarterback, obviously. And it's one of those spots where I think right now, like, people in this week have been saying, oh, well, look how Arch Manning played against Ohio State. And with all the hype there, and I understand that. And that's a potential way this could go. But I also am curious to see if this will go the way Caleb Williams went, where he's dropped into the Red River shootout and he's down 14 and he goes off and wins the game. The way Trevor Lawrence went, where he's dropped into Kyle Field against the Aggies, leads Clemson to a comeback, goes undefeated, wins the national championship. Which Bryce Underwood are we going to get? Week 1, Arch Manning, or are we going to get a star in the making right there in front of our eyes? And I'm really curious to see how that goes. Offensively, Michigan, no real receiver help last week. Bryce Underwood completed a few passes, but his leading, target and leading receiver was a tight end in Marlon Klein. And then they also he had 0 runs, 0 carries. He was sacked twice, and those were his 2 carries. He did not run the ball at all. And that was something we saw a ton on his tape in high school. And I think it's going to be something we need to see going forward for Michigan to win games. And so I'm really curious to see how they'll use it. And I'm also curious from like an X's and O's and like coaching mind game battle, did they not use any quarterback runs to save them for this week? That is something I'm really curious to see on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Bryce Underwood's also my key for the Michigan offense because as good as Justice Haynes is, this is a Brent Venables, Oklahoma defensive line. So I expect them to kind of dig in and stop the run or at least limit it to the point where Bryce Underwood has to make plays. And I guess I said Bryce Underwood's the key, but the receiver room is also – they're going to have to get open. It's not just the defensive line of Oklahoma that's good. It's a good defense as a whole. So someone's going to have to make plays. Bryce Underwood's going to have to find a way to make plays while also not turning over the football. I think turnover margin is going to be crucial in this game because I don't expect it to be very high scoring. You throw a bad pick and the other team has it 1st and 10 on Michigan's 30 because Bryce Underwood just threw a bad pass. Well, that's at least a field goal, maybe a touchdown. That short field, I think that's going to matter a ton. But I'm just so excited to see Bryce Underwood play and what he does. Jayshon Barham, Jackson makes a good point, got suspended for targeting one of Michigan's better defenders.
Bullshit call.
Yeah. It was awful. It was
so bad. It was really bad.
Terrible.
And I really can't believe the appeal didn't work. Like, I kind of thought that, like, the refs just kind of dug their heels in and were like, we made the right call, we're going to leave it. And then they would appeal it and get it fixed. And the NCAA was just like, nah.
See, NCAA is just going to probably back their refs almost every time.
He gets called for targeting because the quarterback is short. Like, that's the only reason it happened. Just because his helmet is above the quarterback's helmet. There's just nothing he could do. And, like, the way he tackled him, too, I think is the safest way because he can't go for his legs. That's illegal. What's he going to do? Spear him like he's freaking Edge?
Yeah.
And this is WWE? I don't know what he was supposed to do. And so I hate that. And that's going to be key in that first half. How will that go? Because he is the Mike linebacker for Michigan. He's not the green dot, but he is one of the key pieces for that defense.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to flip it for Oklahoma's offense. I think their O-line play against Michigan's defensive line, which is another great unit like Oklahoma's, is huge because their O-line was terrible last year. And so this is the first big test for them. Can they give Mateer time? Can they open up running lanes for Mateer and Jaden Ott, both of them? So I'm just very interested to see how they hold up. Because if they, as good as Mateer is, if you make him play, and he's great at extending plays too, but if you can just make him have to do that continually, he's going to make a mistake at some point, in my opinion. He's going to throw a bad ball that's going to get picked off. So I really need to see that Michigan front seven cause havoc. And then conversely, I need to see if Oklahoma's offensive line can hold up or not.
Yeah, you mentioned offensive line. Luke Baklenko started at left tackle for them. They had questions if they were going to start a true freshman. They ended up starting the junior, who was listed 3rd on their depth chart. Although it was a or, so he was technically the 3rd name. But he ended up starting at left tackle. I thought he played fine. And then Jaden Ott, 1 carry last week, was running back 3 on the depth chart. His 1 carry was in the 4th quarter on the 2nd possession. They bring him in, give him the ball. He loses 3 yards, and they take him out of the game.
Tough look for him. So they got to look out for the other running backs then.
Super curious there. He was dealing with shoulder injury throughout camp. Venables said in the post-game press conference that he missed a lot of practice through fall camp, and that was the reason he didn't start him in week 1. And then he said, you're going to see a lot more of him.
Makes sense.
So I think Jaden Ott is going to get a ton of carries this week. I hope he does because he's on my fantasy team.
Yeah, that's the kind of statement Jack needs from Dan Lanning.
Yeah, someone tell me what's going on with Mekhi Hughes, man.
One question about the X's and O's, because you talked about Oklahoma and how they didn't run a lot of their QB runs last week.
Or Michigan.
Michigan didn't run a lot of QB runs?
I mean, neither of them did, to be honest.
Right. But you were talking about how, so I'm curious to see, like, does Michigan have an advantage because they've seen Mateer in that system? They can go back and watch that Washington State tape. I feel like that could give them a leg up as far as handling a talented quarterback goes, because they can go back and watch tape that Oklahoma's not going to have on Bryce Underwood. They have not. We don't have a season's worth of Bryce Underwood or with that Michigan offense. We've got high school tape on him, and we've seen the Michigan offense, but not together. So I think that could be interesting. Does Michigan seem to be more aware of what's going on defense? Are they more ready for it? So I'll be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, I want to see that as well. You make a really good point. John Mateer and that offensive system has an entire year of tape at Washington State to go off of for the Wolverines. And, maybe they sent some guys to stand on the sideline.
I almost made a joke about that.
I cannot confirm if any Michigan personnel were on the sideline this weekend for Oklahoma. They will be this weekend in Norman on the sideline. I can confirm that.
That is true.
What kind of odds could we get for that?
But that's a good point.
Minus $1 million.
That's a good point, Sanders. The lack of film on Bryce Underwood, and I think personally, like the fact that like what I saw and what we saw from Michigan against New Mexico with Bryce Underwood didn't look anything like its high school tape at all. That is really that's the most interesting thing to me is personally I would use Bryce Underwood in his ground game because I compared it to literally Lamar Jackson's high school tape. That's the way it looked, and he was playing against kind of weaker competition, sure, but he is a prolific athlete, and I want to see that against Oklahoma on the grandest stage of them all, ABC, with Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler on the call, and College Game Day.
Yeah, so the spread is Oklahoma favored by 4.5. What are y'all's thoughts? Y'all taking Oklahoma to cover and Michigan to cover and win? What are you thinking?
This is a tough one because it really just depends, I think, on what we see from the quarterback in Bryce Underwood. Because if Bryce Underwood plays like Trevor Lawrence when he got dropped in, I think Michigan wins this game. If he does not, if he plays, I don't remember what your other examples were.
Arch Manning.
Or even, So
I'm thinking of guys that just had all of this hype coming in, and then their first performance. We've seen the Trevor Lawrence, the Caleb Williams, and then we saw what we saw last week with Arch Manning. And so I want to see. Now, Bryce has already played a game, so he has that advantage, but I do want to see how that looks on Saturday.
I think I'm going to pick Michigan to cover.
But not win.
No, I'm not going to pick them to win. I'm going to take Oklahoma wins by a field goal.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a very yucky game. I don't really think I don't see Bryce Underwood coming in and just going crazy, looking majestic
finishing
and
with
graceful.
3 touchdowns.
Yeah, just because I don't know if the supporting cast is good enough, even if I think he is that good. And I trust Michigan's defense enough because they have a great defensive unit to make it yucky for Oklahoma as well. But I think Michigan's going to win the yucky game in Norman, make a big statement, come out with a huge win, and move on to Big Ten play. This could be a 17-20 type game, like turnovers on both sides, fourth down stops, defenses flying around. Celebrate defense, so maybe it's not a yucky game. The defenses are just that good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to take Michigan to win this one. Go Wolverines.
Yeah, I think it's going to look more physical than the LSU-Clemson game, but I think the score is going to be very similar. Kind of scores, 17-10. I personally am taking Oklahoma to win. I just trust the offense more, and I think the defense is kind of a push, I think is arguable. Michigan's defense is better, in my opinion, but I think the home crowd, will help Oklahoma's defense in that game. So I'm going to call it a push there, and I'm going to say that I trust Oklahoma's offense more. I would bet Michigan 4.5 all day, though. I do not think I think that's too many points given to Oklahoma for as low as the total is. 17-14 seems super, super easy, and they're still not even covering by 1.5, so I would take Michigan plus the 4.5. But give me the Sooners.
I like it. We can move on to our next game. Illinois takes a trip to the East Coast. They face the Blue Blue Devils is what I had in my head.
The Blue Blue Devils.
The Duke Blue Devils in a non-conference matchup. Illinois is favored by 3.5. A lot of people have high hopes for this Illinois team, and I think some people have pretty high hopes for Duke. I think Duke themselves has high hope for within this program for this year, kind of building on what Manny Diaz did there in year one. Thoughts on this game? Things you expect to see?
Before we get into the breakdown of the game, I want to give my thoughts because I told Jack pre-show I think this might be the most important game of the week, even over Michigan and Oklahoma, and I'll explain why. I think that the loser of Michigan-Oklahoma comes out and still has a very real route to the college football playoffs. Both of them play in very good conferences, ACC, not SEC, Big Ten, SEC, and could compete for that if we see development. John Mateer is a possible Heisman winner, could lead his team. Michigan's very talented. If Bryce Underwood develops throughout the season, they're going to beat Ohio State, so that's a big top 10 win. I think both those teams have routes to a lot of success later on this season. I think the loser of this Illinois at Duke game could struggle to find themselves get past 9 wins. Illinois in the Big Ten is going to have to play some very tough competition. I don't have their schedule put up in front of me, but they're going to have to face an assortment of the Oregons, Ohio States, Penn States of the world.
They play at Indiana, host USC, host Ohio State. They have to go to Washington.
Yeah, and I'm high on Washington. I've been really impressed with Damon Williams. So I think that whoever loses this game is going to find themselves in a tough position to try and recover, barring going 11-1, and with the schedules, Duke having to play in the ACC with the Clemsons, Miamis, Florida States now, SMU. I don't see either of these teams being able to recover and get to 11-1 or 10-2. But I think the winner is going to look back later on and say this is a good win out of conference against a 9-3 team. So that's kind of why I think it's really important. I think the loser of Michigan-Oklahoma can bounce back. I think this game long-term sets up this could be one of our at-large playoff teams.
That's fair. I think Michigan-Oklahoma is the biggest game of the week. I personally just don't think Illinois or Duke make the playoffs, but you make a very valid case for your reasoning, so I don't hate that.
I think winning this game gives Duke a good chance to make the playoffs because next week they'll play the Darian Minsa game against Tulane, and then it's NC State. That's going to be a win. They'll go to Syracuse. If they win that, they'll play JKS at Cal, and then they're hosting Georgia Tech, and then they're at Clemson. And so competitive in either of those games and winning with those games. With the rest of their schedule, it's Virginia, North Carolina, Wake Forest, and UConn. They could be 11-1.
They lose
if
to Virginia,
they were to
upset
Georgia Tech or Clemson, which is possible. They've done it. They've made those kind of upsets before. They've upset Clemson before. So I don't think that's a bad point, Sanders. It's a pretty critical game for the Duke Blue Devils. In terms of how they're actually going to look this week, Darian Minsa was productive last week, but I'd say the biggest thing for me is I did not like the way the game looked. He was great. If you just looked at the stat sheet, you would think Duke played really well last week, but I watched the game this morning, not live. It was on a Thursday night. The student section was about half full, but there was nobody in that crowd for a night game, and that's concerning for this Saturday if there's going to be any kind of a crowd effect, which has shown, at least in the past, that it can be a factor for the Blue Devils. And then against Elon, an FCS opponent, it was 10-10 at halftime. It was 17-24 midway through the fourth quarter, and then Duke riles off 3 touchdowns, including a punt return touchdown. And then that's how the game ends up at 45-17. This was a 7-point game against Elon midway through the fourth quarter. So it's not necessarily an impressive performance, I think, personally. Elon was running the football on them pretty well, and then even finding spots in the passing game. So it's concerning for the Blue Devils this week where you're coming to a big game and you got to host Illinois. And that's why Illinois is favored by 3.5, and I think that's a fair favoring. Defensively, they're going to have to be productive this week, especially stopping the run. Elon, like I said, ran well on them. And Illinois last week was prolific on the ground. 3 guys with 9 carries or more and 50 yards or more for each of them. Luke Altmaier only threw for 217 yards, and they scored 50-plus points. So really, really productive afternoon for Illinois. And that concerns me for the Blue Devils.
It's a great point because if they can't stop the run, they can't use the strength of their defense, which is the Manny Diaz exotic blitz packages, which also happens to be Illinois' biggest weakness. Luke Altmaier is not the best mover in the pocket. He doesn't pass well under pressure. But if Duke can't stop the run game first and foremost, because Illinois is 100% going to come out and try and establish that, then it doesn't matter if you can dial up all these blitzes because you're not going to get the chance to if it's always 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, stuff like that. You got to get them in 3rd and long, then dial up the pressure and try and make plays that way. So I think that's a fantastic point.
Are we at all nervous about Darian Minsa hurt his ankle in that game? Is that right? He stepped on a referee and twisted it and came off the field limping. He returned that game, right?
He returned and he still played. He threw they had 2 touchdowns. He threw 2 of them in the fourth quarter. So he was playing fine. I don't think there's going to be any concern for Saturday. They're not going to have Terry Moore back. He's still out with an ACL injury. He's a potential draft prospect for Duke. But I don't think there's any injury concern there. To like flip it to the defensive side of the ball, they're going to need, like Jack said, to stop the ground game and be able to use where their strength is from a personnel group is in their defensive backs, and then on the edge they have Vincent Anthony Jr. and Wesley Williams, who are both potential draft prospects, but very talented players, and then Caleb Weaver and Chandler Rivers are 2 guys that I think can give Luke Altmaier some trouble in the passing game, which he is not a bad passer at all and passed really well last week. Hank Beatty had 5 catches for 108 yards, and then Justin Bowick had 2 touchdowns himself. So they need to stop the ground game to allow their best players in Caleb Weaver, Chandler Rivers, and the 2 edge rushers to help them in this game. For Illinois defensively, it's going to come down to, can Xavier Scott and Matthew Bailey play well against this past game, where Darian Mensah still threw for almost 400 yards last week, even though it didn't necessarily look good. And then can Gabe Jacas, I would assume is how you say his last name. I don't know how to actually say his last name.
It's that or like Yakis?
It's one of the 2. He was a dog last week. He's going to be a dog all season for Illinois. He's going to be a high draft pick. He had 2 sacks, a pass deflection, and a forced fumble last week. And that doesn't even include putting in his tackle numbers. Like, this guy was really, really good last week, and he's going to be the game wrecker for Illinois this week.
Sure.
Give Darian Mensah some trouble with protecting the football. And so those are your kind of pieces to look at defensively for both teams.
I agree. It's like 2 completely different tales of defense, because Duke's going to look to dial up these blitzes and get creative and force pressure that way. Illinois is going to play kind of this weird like 5-man front, play straight up, probably see a lot of man coverage from their defensive backs, and just bank on the fact that they're better than Duke, and so they can play it straight up and win. So I'm very interested to see how it turns out. Personally, Illinois is favored by 3.5. I have Illinois covering. I think it'll be a close game. I think Duke will keep it, interesting. They'll make a couple plays, but I don't think they have enough overall to beat this Illinois team.
Yeah, I will also take Illinois to cover.
I'm going to take Duke to win and cover, even though I spoke poorly about them for about 10 minutes there. I just think this is I don't think Luke Altmaier is up to the test for this game. I think Illinois maybe has some trouble running the football, which I think will surprise them. And then the big thing for me is I think special teams is going to play a really big factor. And I'm going to say that again in this next game that we're going to preview. But both of these teams had a punt return for a touchdown last week, and were very good there, even in punt returns outside of the 2 returns for a touchdown. And I think that could be the difference in the game. So I'm going to take Duke and the playmakers to just make enough plays to beat Illinois this week.
I like it. I really wanted to pick Duke. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, which will get us into our last college football game we're previewing. Cy-Hawk, storied rivalry, Iowa versus Iowa State. Iowa does kind of own the rivalry, unfortunately. But Iowa State has won 2 of the last 3, right? Because under Matt Campbell, they've been great, more so than they historically are. So this is a huge one. I didn't expect us to get this rivalry week 2. I feel like, is it not normally played later in the season, or am I just completely making it up?
No, it's usually played early on.
I just am completely making it up. I think in my head, it's just like rivalries are later down the line.
I agree.
This is one of those that's played in those first 3 weeks.
Sure. Should be a good game. Will probably be another defensive game. We're going to get to see Gronowski, Iowa's quarterback, versus Rocco Beck, Iowa State's quarterback. What do we expect to see in this game? What are y'all looking forward to?
I think one of the big tests will be, what does Mark Gronowski look like? Oh, let me change the sheet and get that up. I think finding out what Mark Gronowski looks like, just not a whole lot. Last week, only 8 for 15 for 44 yards, 11 carries, 39 yards, and a touchdown. He had a passing touchdown as well. Just didn't really impress. I assume they played a cupcake. I don't remember.
They played the University of Albany.
Yeah, played a cupcake. Was not impressed with Gronowski, and I was high on him. I watched his tape at South Dakota State. South Dakota.
The Jackrabbits.
Jackrabbits.
The South
Looked
Dakota
fantastic. Looked fantastic. Great throws, really great reads. He was able to hit some guys through very small holes, and also a fantastic runner, high top end speed. And I was excited to see him play. I was kind of hoping maybe I was never expecting him to elevate the Iowa offense to a Big 12 offense or something, you know, dropping 30 a game, but maybe to get to 20 or 22. Wasn't really impressed with him last week. So what does he look like against Iowa State? And then what is the Iowa defense, which is traditionally fantastic? What do they look like against this Iowa State offense that looked really good in week 0 against Kansas, or good at times? We saw some really good play from Rocco Becht as he kind of gels and meshes with new wide receivers after losing his wide receiver 1 and 2 to the draft, 2 NFL guys. They looked really good. Last week as well, he had 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions on the year from Beck. So what does the Iowa defense look like? Are they going to establish themselves as the usual top 15 squad, or are we going to see Iowa State kind of take advantage of that?
I will say in Gronowski's defense, they ran the ball so much that while he didn't really put anything on tape that was like, oh, yeah, that's impressive, he didn't really have the chance to. He threw the ball 15 times and ran it 11. They ran the ball 53 times on the ground, which if Iowa gets the chance to just pound the rock, they're not going to go away from it. They're going to make you stop that first and foremost. I still would have liked to see more from the Iowa passing game because I would always like to see more from the Iowa passing game.
I will say he completed 8 passes to 8 different guys.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's kind of
right.
If that means anything to you.
Doesn't help me at all fantasy-wise. I
Yeah.
can't even go and try and find a guy on the waiver wire
Exactly.
for good value. But yeah, overall, I still, as good as they ran the ball, I would like to see more from the passing game. And then when I'm looking to pick this game, which we're not quite there yet, but it's hard for me to trust Iowa when Iowa State's offense is just much further along and much more advanced and complete. I can trust them to run the ball a little bit. Rocco Becht, as exciting as Gronowski is, Rocco Becht is a much better quarterback in my opinion. A lot more, the mental aspects are there a whole lot more. I expect him to go through reads, and if going gets tough, to be able to lead his team. So it gets hard to pick Iowa in that regard. But if Iowa was to win this game, it's going to be on the back of their defense. What do you see there, JP?
So for me, there's 2 keys to this game, and the casuals, which the casuals are right, and they have the right to make this point, are going to say this is going to be a game of defenses. I'm telling you right now, the 2 keys to the game are running the football, which I'm big on, and special teams is the key to the game for me. Special teams. And let me give you some guys you've never heard of, but you're going to know their name on Saturday because you're going to hear their name probably about 10 to 15 times. For Iowa, I'm going to start with the punter. It's Reese Dockin. He had 2 punts last week, which is good for Iowa. Only had to punting twice, but he punted twice. Each was 50 yards with no return on either of them. And so field position is a big thing for Iowa. It always is with how poor their offense is. They need to play the field position game. And then the kicker, Drew Stevens, made a 55-yarder week 1. Remember, that's the same distance as Kyle Ferry made his field goal. It was the longest kick for Iowa since, I think, the early 2000s. So this is a guy who could be a potential star. It's his first year kicking for Iowa. But Kyle Conradi, the Iowa State kicker, is already a star, and he's already a star in this rivalry game. He made the 54-yarder last year at Iowa to win the Classic and the Cy-Hawk. And then last week, he made a 63-yard field goal.
That's crazy.
College kicker made a 63-yard field goal. So Kyle Conradi is another key to the game. Special teams, I think, is going to be imperative for a score total that's 41.5. Kicking the football is going to be more important. So the European version of football, I would say, is more important than the American football this weekend.
I love it.
How do kicking the ball go?
I think that the point you made about casuals, thinking that defense is important, I think those two almost go hand in hand because when defense is so important, it makes all the little things like field position matter.
Absolutely.
Right? If you give up a 40-yard punt return and they're already in field goal range in a game that finishes short of the 20s, that field goal matters a whole lot more than a game that's in the 30s or 40s. If you give up a punt return for a touchdown, I mean, that's huge. So I think that those things kind of go hand in hand. I think that in a lot of games where it's a defensive battle, the special teams is going to have a lot of impact on the outcome. If one team can make a statement on special teams and get 3 points, a touchdown, or put themselves in the red zone with a really good kickoff return, I think that kind of dictates how the game goes, and it goes hand in hand with the defense mattering.
Yep. And then my other point is running the football. So Iowa last week, 53 runs to 16 passes. They ran 3.3 more times than they threw the football against the University of Albany. And then Iowa State, surprisingly, you would not think this, but through 2 games, which I will say that first game, it was pouring rain for a ton of it, so they had to. But they ran it a ton last week as well. 88 runs to 48 passes, so almost twice as much are they running the football to throwing it. And so running the football is critical to this game. Who is going to be productive there? You're going to look at guys for Iowa State and Carson Hansen and Abu Sama the third. And then for Iowa, Iowa. Mark Gronowski, of course, for the quarterback run. He was good last week, 11 carries, 39 yards, and a touchdown. But Xavier Williams and Terrell Washington both had 10-plus carries last week, both had 60-plus yards. Xavier Williams had 122 and a touchdown. How productive are the teams at running the football? I think it's going to be critical to the game. I'll go ahead and tell you, I think the padlock stat of the game, credit to Josh Pate, is time of possession. I just think whoever has the football more in this game is going to win it. So that, I think, is the 2 keys to the game: special teams, and then how productive are these teams running the football.
I love it. Let's get into predicting this game. Iowa State's a 3.5-point favorite at home. What's your lean, Sanders?
I think I'm going to take Iowa to cover, Iowa State to win.
Okay. So it's about by a field goal.
Yep. I've got it being another close game. I think that JP makes a really good point about it being a defensive and special teams battle, seeing who can hold the other team to fewer points. But I think it'll be a good game, close game, and finish within a field goal.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm glad that I get to watch it since the state game is not till the night game, and I think this will be the game I'll turn on because we're not going to get to see Michigan, Oklahoma until Sunday morning.
I'll fill you all in.
Yeah, I'm sure that the group chat will be blowing up about it anyway, so we'll get live updates during the game. But I'm excited for this one. The road team has won 5 of the last 5 meetings, and Iowa is the road team. This is your other stat, which this one I'm directly stealing from Josh Pate. Since 2020, Iowa is 33-1 when scoring 21 or more points.
Are they going to score 21 or more points in this game?
No. Give me the Cyclones to win the Cy-Hawk and be the first team to win at home since pre-COVID. I'm going to take Iowa State to win and cover 21-17.
I'm also going to take Iowa State to win and cover. I just love Rocco Becht, and I think he's going to be the guy to lead his team to victory here and make the plays when they're needed. So give me Iowa State to win and cover. And that wraps up our college games, and now we can roll into our NFL games, which we have 3 of.
Yeah, our plan most weeks, most preview Thursdays will be to do a 12 o'clock game, an afternoon game, a 3:30 game, and then a night
Sunday
game,
night game,
a primetime game.
Yep.
Maybe we pick out of Thursday, Sunday, Monday.
We won't ever do Thursday, in my opinion. It makes
That's
no
fair,
sense.
because it'll be happening as we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, not unless we have like 100 live viewers.
Sure. Yeah, if we ever get to that point, then we can.
Yeah.
If they, yeah.
So we'll be doing either the Sunday or Monday. It'll probably typically be the Sunday, just because I feel like the Sunday night game.
The
holds
Mondays
so
games
much.
are always cheeks, man. I don't know why.
There's some good ones.
There's some good
see.
ones here
We'll
and
see.
there. We'll see.
But it'll
this
be
Monday will be
3
interesting.
NFL games.
Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of it. We can get started on that.
We do have a Friday night game in Brazil this week,
that
which
we
makes
are
it a little
previewing.
weird. So we're only previewing 2 Sunday games because of that. And that's the first one we're going to get into, an AFC West clash, a divisional clash against Kansas City at Los Angeles, technically, the Chargers. But it's in Brazil, so they don't get to play at home. Should be a fun one. I'm excited to see. We've heard a lot about how this Chiefs offense is going to look more like the early 2020s Chiefs offense. We've heard a lot about the Chargers running game, how it's going to improve, bringing in Najee Harris and drafting him Arian Hampton. Now we get to see it on the field. What are y'all's thoughts about this game?
Sanders, go ahead. You're the Chargers fan.
I should have mentioned it.
Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate to have one of your 8 or 9 home games wasted on a game.
In my opinion, your biggest home game is not at home.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it is. In a AFC West where the Chiefs have won every year for the last 10 years, something like that. It's been a long time.
Since Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl.
Thank you, 2015. So since that 2015.
If they win it this year, it will have been a decade.
Yeah.
Straight.
It's really unfortunate that, like Jack said, biggest game of the season, biggest home game of the season is on the road, and you're having to make fans travel, and you're not in your home locker room. That's really unfortunate. I'll be interested to see there are a couple big takeaways, a couple big things to watch for. What does the Chiefs' offense look like? Starting wide receiver Rashee Rice suspended. They've got guys coming back from injury. Hollywood Brown is coming back from an injury. So how does the offense mesh? It is the NFL. It is not college football. So I got to kind of change my mindset. These guys have been practicing 8 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, all summer long. Like it's their job. So I do expect it to mesh because they're professionals. And it's kind of what they do. But what does the offense look like with guys coming back from injuries? And then also, what does the Chargers offense look like? What does Keenan Allen have left in the tank? Went to Chicago for a year, I believe, and was wide receiver there, wide receiver 2 there behind.
He was a 1,000-yard receiver there.
Yeah, but he's getting older. He's got to be over 30, and he comes back to Los Angeles.
Extensive injury history as well with him.
Yes, extensive injury history. Runs it back with Los Angeles and Justin Herbert. So what does the offense look like for Los Angeles with Omarion Hampton, Najee Harris, and then the 2 wide receivers, Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen? Can Justin Herbert throw for his, he's got 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in his arm. But for that to happen,
That'd be crazy.
No, but he's the kind of quarterback that
he could.
He can
That'd
do
be
that,
quite
right?
the
There are
statement
some quarterbacks
week
who
one.
you realistically don't really expect. There are NFL quarterbacks.
I don't expect Justin Fields to throw for.
Right,
I get what you were saying. That would be.
Justin Herbert is the Ben Roethlisberger where he's just going to throw a lot, and he's going to get a lot, and he's going to rack up yards and touchdowns, and he can
maybe
right, if he plays well, and if he doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, like we saw in that playoff game last year. So what does that offense look like? And then one of the biggest takeaways is that offensive line. Losing Rashawn Slater to the ACL was very, very unfortunate. One of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. They have to move Joe Alt over from right tackle to left tackle, and now they're starting. I don't have his name put up. Do you the
4th round pick,
3rd round pick from 2019,
pick, yeah.
Whose name I don't know off the top of my head. I can pull it up, but so now they're having to move a rookie to left tackle to guard Justin Herbert's blind side.
Sophomore? No,
sophomore. Yeah,
is Alt? Oh, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, well, sophomore, 2nd year tackle, moving over from right tackle to left tackle. What does that offensive line look like? What kind of holes are they creating for Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton? But yeah, those are kind of my big things to watch for is what do the offenses look like, because both of them are going to be a little bit different from last year with the Chiefs returning guys from injuries and then Justin Herbert bringing the Chargers bringing in Hampton and Allen. So that's kind of my stuff to watch for.
Yeah, I think all eyes are going to be on the offense because whether right or wrong, both these defenses were good last year, and people expect them to be good again this year. That the questions are on the offensive side for the most part. One key factor I want to toss out it's been thrown around. The Chiefs play pretty well on grass. Arrowhead is a grass field. Brazil, they're going to be playing on grass, and the conditions may not be great, but the Chiefs are used to it. I think that could give them a huge upside there if the game gets sloppy. I don't know if I really see a big Justin Herbert game here, just because I think knowing how am I forgetting Brody's name? Harbaugh. Thank you. Knowing what Harbaugh is as a coach and what he likes to do is pound the rock. And so I think we're going to see a ton of Hampton and Harris in this game. They're going to rely on the run game, or at least try to get that going week 1.
Yeah,
JP,
I could definitely see that being the case.
Your thoughts on this game?
So I'm just going to give you a few numbers. So Chiefs are 6-1 in season openers with Mahomes. Their only loss, the shocker to the Lions 2 years ago. Herbert is 4-1 in season openers with victories over the Raiders twice, the Washington football team, not the Commanders, and the 2020 rookie Joe Burrow Bengals. So not necessarily a huge resume there. Of course, the Chiefs have played in high-profile games, and their season openers have a win over the Chargers in Week 1. So something to look at, a trend there for Mahomes and the Chiefs. Another trend, Chiefs are 11-3 versus Chargers with Patrick Mahomes and have won the last 7 games. Herbert started his career 2-0 against the Chiefs and, of course, has lost the last 7 against Kansas City. So those 2 trends to look at for me. I think the key to the game is left tackle for both sides. Chiefs, of course, for the second Super Bowl, have got eaten alive in the pass rush game, and that was left tackle was a huge trouble all of last year. Josh Simmons, the rookie out of Ohio State, is going to start at left tackle for the Chiefs, and I want to see how that goes against Khalil Mack, how that goes against Thierry Tart, Tuli Piloto. I'm really curious to see how that will go.
Is that the best JP's ever done
that
at
was
pronouncing
fire.
a name on this show?
Like my jaw
There's a little
dropped.
accent to it.
That deserves some
I'm
claps.
very
That
proud of
deserves
you,
some claps.
JP.
And then, of course, Rashawn Slater out. How does Joe Alt play when he's now moved to left tackle against George Karlaftis, who is now in his second contract, and Chris Jones, Bulldog legend on the side of the stadium? I want to see that kind of matchup. I think that's the key critical matchup to the game. For the Chiefs, I want to see some showtime. I want to see some offense. Of course, without Rashee Rice, it'll be an interesting question. But Hollywood Brown is a full go finally. After all of last year, he was dealing with injury troubles. He is a full go. Isaiah Pacheco is a full go coming off his broken leg, which he returned at the end of last season. That just didn't look good. Kareem Hunt is fully healthy. Juju Smith-Schuster, by the way, is still their third receiver.
I forgot he was there. That's crazy.
So he's back with the team, and he will be wide receiver 3. And then with the way Travis Kelce has talked this offseason, it feels like we're in for, at least for him, he thinks a productive season. I don't think so. I don't think he will even have really, top 5 tight end numbers this year. But he is motivated and he's not distracted, I think, is the big thing coming into this season. And that was a huge problem last year.
He was saving up for a ring. He had a lot on his mind.
It was distractions for that team. It was thinking about the three-peat the entire year. It was the pressure of that. The way they tried to approach it was just like pretending it didn't exist, which is something that Nick Sirianni and the Eagles are now going to try, pretending that they don't know it's banner night, but yet he knows that they won't be out there when the banner's dropped.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know it's banner night. But he knows they won't be out there.
I hate that so much because I get you're trying to be like, next one up, it's a new season. But I saw someone say this, I completely agree. It's like, why win if you're not going to celebrate it? Like, what is the whole point then? If you're not even going to go open your ring on ring night or you're not going to be there for the banner unveiling, why the hell did you win it then? It's so stupid. If I won the Super Bowl, I would party and I would celebrate. And there's still time to get prepared and work out and be ready for next season. But celebrate the Super Bowl, man.
I agree 100%. So Kansas City doesn't have that distraction anymore this year. Now they get to be hunters, although they'll always be the hunted as long as Mahomes is there. So like I said, left tackle, I think that's the key to the game. How does that go against pass rushers that we think are good and will be good this year? How does those two play out? And then Jat brought up a good point. I don't think it is being talked about enough in lead up to this game. Last year's game in Brazil, the field conditions were really tough, and it was a sloppy, messy game. Saquon ran for a bunch of yards in that game. He scored 2 touchdowns. I want to see how that looks this year. I don't necessarily expect it to be better field conditions, but now this is the second year they're playing in Brazil, so maybe it'll be better. But that is something that's really curious to see how that'll play out. I think it could play a factor in this game.
Yeah, I think so. If it comes down to a like we saw in Farmageddon, I really think that gives the Chargers, I think, stand a much better chance if we're talking about a game where conditions are rough and wide receivers are slipping during their breaks. I think the Chargers' odds of winning this game go up a good bit with the backfield duo they have of Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris. I think that offensive line, even with the loss for Sean Slater, will still be very good this year. So I think that if that was the case, and I hope it is the case because I want the Chargers to win, I think they would have a much better chance with Patrick Mahomes unable to kind of deal to his weapons. And he is going to have a lot of them this year, even without Rashee Rice due to suspension. They are going to have a lot of weapons that he can work with. So if that's taken away due to weather, I think it gives him a much better chance.
Let's get into predicting it. I think we've talked enough about what we're looking to see. Chiefs are favored by 3.5. As I said, Chiefs are 6-1 in season openers with Mahomes. The only loss being to the Detroit Lions, and they've won the last 7 games against Los Angeles. So I'm taking the Chiefs, and I'm taking them to win and cover. As I said earlier today in the Angle Ball chat, why watch this game when you know the story already. Chiefs win off a big penalty late in the game and cover.
Sure. I'm going to take the Chiefs to cover as well. It'll be a close one. You don't really see as many blowouts in the NFL as you do college. You know, we were talking about college earlier.
Yeah. In the NFL, you see like one a season, like realistically, like a blowout.
Sure.
And it's like jaw-dropping when it happens.
But I think the Chiefs will win by about a touchdown. So give me the Chiefs to win and cover.
I'm going to take the Chargers to cover
Wow.
and win.
Wow.
Yep.
Respect.
I will take the Chargers to win this game.
That's crazy.
I'm betting on bad weather. It is summer. Maybe we get a nice monsoon to really moisten the field. But yeah, I'll take them to cover and win.
What do you need to see from Omari and Hampton to prove yourself right in this game?
To prove myself
100 yards? Like
What
you
is-
were really high on him.
I am very yes.
Into the draft
and
process.
that what I need to see from him. Well, it'll depend on how much we see from Najee Harris. I would love to see.
Harbaugh said Hampton's a starter today. If
I
that
think-
helps you out any.
I do expect Hampton to be the starter, but Najee Harris was very talented coming out of college. And so
that was
if
COVID, though.
it was COVID, but what do we see from him? Because I feel like he's now behind because he just came from Pittsburgh, right?
He was an 1,000-yard rusher all 4 seasons.
Right, and I think that this is the best offensive line he will been behind because that Pittsburgh offensive line has had issues for several years. They drafted Najee to fix the O-line, which was a huge mistake. So now they put him in a situation where he's RB2, right? So he comes in and he faces the defense that's dealing with Omarion Hampton, who I love. He's behind the best O-line I think we've seen him behind. From Hampton, I don't think I'm going to, unless he plays badly, I don't think I'm going to see anything that makes me feel nervous about my opinion because I think Najee Harris is going to complement him well. I think we could, even with Hampton labeled the starter, I think we could see a lot of rushes from both guys. So Hampton would have to be straight up bad for me to be concerned. He could post 40, 50 rush yards, and I would still be pretty happy just because I don't think. Now it depends if it's a rushing situation and Najee finishes with 120 and Hampton finishes with 40. I get a little nervous. If they're even and we see a backfield like we see in Detroit where both guys are getting touches, would love to have like a 1A or a 1 and 1A situation. But yeah, I think Hampton, if he can finish, above the 4 yards per carry, that's pretty standard. He's still a rookie. It's still early. The Chiefs D-line with Karlaftis and Chris Jones is good. And it's a good defensive line. The defensive coordinator is very good. So if he can finish around that 4 yards per carry, get to 60, 80 yards, a touchdown, I think I'll still feel good. I'm not going to hang my hat on any. He could go for 180 and 6 yards a carry, and I would still be like, it's one game. So
we'll circle back and ask you that again in a couple of weeks. We'll move on to our next game here.
Yeah.
Lions at Packers, which was always going to be a good Week 1 game. It's a divisional matchup against two teams that a lot of people have high hopes for. But now that the Packers have added Micah Parsons and the high hopes have just become even higher for the Packers, this game has become even higher in stakes, in my opinion, as the Lions, some people have high hopes for them still, and some think they're going to fade. But they're still, it's like, they have the belt right now until someone takes it as like, one of the best teams in the NFC besides the Eagles. Can the Packers come and take that Week 1? It's a huge question. It's at Lambeau, which is huge. Packers are favored by 1.5. What do we think to see in this game?
So I'll go ahead and tell you right now the trends. Packers last year were 1-5 in division, but were 10-1 in every other game last year. And then the Lions have won 3 straight games at Lambeau. So they are not scared to play at Lambeau Field. Dan Campbell is 3-1 at Lambeau Field in his career. So that is why you're seeing it's only 1.5. And really the factor in this game is really just home field advantage for the reason the Packers are favored. For me, the key to the game is I just want to see how does the defense play against this offense that is now new without Ben Johnson. I'm low on the Lions this year. I have them going 7-10 at a time. I had them going 6-11. And I don't think the Lions are going to be bad this year. But I just don't think they're going to win a ton of games, if that makes sense.
Sure.
They have all the weapons there offensively, but I'm really curious to see how it goes without Mr. Ben Johnson and without Aaron Glenn as well defensively. How do they play? They're always going to play with a ton of emotion. They're going to play with a ton of fire. They're going to play with a ton of confidence. They're always going to do that as long as Dan Campbell is there. That is always going to be the case. But how tight are they? How well do they execute? because even a Dan Campbell-led team won 3 games his rookie year as a head coach, which I understand. It was his first year as the head coach, and the Lions were a terrible roster at that time. But that can happen even with a great head coach. So I'm really curious to see how that looks. I just want to see how do the Lions' offense look against what is arguably one of the best defenses they'll play the entire year. Now, Micah Parsons is questionable to play on Sunday. He was limited in practice today as well. So they expect him to play. That's why he's only questionable and not doubtful. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's just kind of on a pitch count. Only takes about 40 snaps, give or take. But even with 40 snaps, he can kind of be a game wrecker. And then my other thing offensively for the Lions, Frank Ragnow retires. Last year, with Frank Ragnow, the Lions were the 3rd best rushing team in the league when it came to winning run blocks. Without Frank Ragnow in 3 games when he was hurt, they were 22nd in the league. Can they still run the ball against Green Bay? I think that's the key to the game as well. Offensive for the Lions and defense for the Packers, I think, is where this game is won and lost.
Sure. Sanders, your thoughts on this game?
Sorry, I was responding to some text, so I didn't hear everything JP said.
Wow.
I think it'll be, if Parsons plays, how much does he affect the game? I think that'll be really interesting. It's going to be 2 of the best edge rushers we saw in the NFL last year, in Aiden Hutchinson and Micah Parsons.
It's the 2 leaders for Defensive Player of the Year in terms of Vegas odds right now.
Very, very good edge rushers. And so how is the game determined by them, right? We've got 2 good offenses. Detroit is very talented, but losing the offensive coordinator, how do they recover from that? And then Green Bay with Jordan Love, and then that wide receiver core that I'm not high on, but it is very deep. Probably the deepest, like you get down to the 6th or 7th guy, and they can probably be wide receiver 2 on other NFL teams. So a very deep wide receiver room, even as if I don't love it. So is the game won by a late strip sack? Is the game won by a safety or a 4th down and 4, and the Micah Parsons just gets to golf and ends the game there? I think that the defensive line and those 2 guys could be really important. What does the rest of that Detroit defensive line look like? Because in Green Bay, we've got the Michigan guy we talked about last year, Rashawn Gary, who we really expect to be a really good 1A on that D-line. Who does Detroit have step up and play 1A there to complement Aiden Hutchinson? So, and then what does Hutchinson look like coming back from the injury? Because realistically, the last we saw him, he was fantastic, yes, but he's been recovering from a broken leg. We got to see what that looks like. I feel like broken legs are less common than ACL. Like I feel like ACL tears, we've kind of come to this place of, all right, cool, he'll be back in 9 months. We're not too worried. Broken legs, bones are more rare, honestly, which is odd to say. But that's kind of the reality. And so what does that look like? Because it's not something we're used to seeing guys come back from. Not that they don't come back from it. It's just we don't see, like, it doesn't happen for us to see it. So what does that look like? And then I'm sure JP talked about it. Like I said, I was a little distracted. What do the coordinators at Detroit look like? I think that's going to be a huge part. Does the offense, is the play calling on par? Is it elite like we saw from Ben Johnson? Are they getting the ball to guys like Jamison Williams in space? Are they getting the ball to guys like Jahmyr Gibbs? Which they will definitely be getting it to Gibbs, but how are they utilizing that? Because it's a very talented offense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm really excited to see what Jordan Love looks like in this first game. I personally think their wide receiver room got a lot better. I know this is something we've discussed multiple times, Sanders, on the show in terms of how we view this room differently. I think Matthew Golden is just a huge addition. We've heard good things in camp. I think Jordan Love is back healthy, so I'm excited to see that. Hopefully he can stay healthy this season. So I'm ready to see them go to work, and I expect them to in this first game and give Detroit a little bit of trouble in that regard. Packers, I already mentioned, our favorite 1.5. Who do you have winning this game? Who do you have? I mean, I feel like if you have Detroit covering, you have them winning, but I guess technically you don't have to.
Yeah, I'll pick Detroit to cover and win. I don't expect as big of a step back from Detroit. I have a lot of trust in Dan Campbell, the way he has scouted talent on the field and on the sidelines as well. He promoted 2 very good coordinators and kind of developed them and got them ready for the next step. I kind of he just seems to be a really good identifier of talent and not personality, but like guys who have it.
Sure.
And they've done that through the draft, and then he's done that in his coaching staff, and I don't really expect him to miss. Now it's going to be hard to replace them. The guys they bring in may not be exactly what they lost, or they may not be like that yet, but I do think he's going to identify some really good coordinators to fill those shoes. And I expect them to be good this year, maybe take a slight step back, but I think they'll be good. I've got them winning and covering.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have Detroit taking a step back this season either, but I think the Packers are going to be so good this year. So I have the Packers winning this game. I have them covering, kind of making a statement week one that all the offseason hype was legit, and they're here to be serious contenders in the NFC. So I have the Packers covering.
Yeah, I've got the Packers finally winning a game at Lambeau against the Lions for the first time in 4 years. I'm obviously really high on the Packers, high on the pre-Micah Parsons. They're my number one team in the NFC, and I think they'll win, and with 1.5 points, they're going to win and cover. But I do think this game is closer. As low as I am in the Lions, I don't think the demise for Detroit starts this early in the season. I think it could be a trouble later on in the season.
Sure.
So give me the Packers to win and cover.
Bet, and that gets us to the Sunday night football game, which is just a treat that we get this week one as a Sunday night football game. Two of the teams that are at the top of the AFC, Ravens at Bills. Bills have protected home field very well recently, but the Ravens, I believe, kind of beat up on Buffalo in the regular season last year, and the Ravens are the current Super Bowl favorite by odds. So what do we think? What do we expect to see in this game?
So these are two teams, for trends-wise, that will start slow for the most part, especially Buffalo. The Ravens are 4-2 in season openers with Lamar. Of course, they lost in a heartbreaker last year to Kansas City, and then they've lost a season opener as well outside of that. But for the Bills specifically, they are super slow out of the gates with Josh Allen. They're 4-3. One of those wins is last year against Arizona, where Arizona was a double-digit underdog and covered and was in the game, and Kyler Murray had the ball with 30 seconds left, down 3, past the 50-yard line, and throws a terrible pick, just an awful pick. But they escaped out of that game. And then you think the Aaron Rodgers Achilles injury was against Buffalo. Buffalo lost that game after Aaron Rodgers gets hurt on the third play of the game. So this is a team that just starts slow in season openers. The only one that they've really started fast was when they defeated the defending Super Bowl champs in the Los Angeles Rams, where they kind of boat raced them the entire game. But again, that was a Rams team that went all in on that season, and then going forward were not really that great until they have now returned with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. So Buffalo plays really slow in these season openers, and I don't expect it to really be any different here. That's why the Ravens are favored, I think. I think this is a revenge game for them with how they lost last year in the postseason with the devastating drop for Mark Andrews. Lamar was not great in that game. He doesn't turn the ball over all season and then turns it over twice against Buffalo. They destroyed Buffalo in week 3 last year, scoring, I think it was a 30-point blowout. Sanders talked about there's not a lot of blowouts. That was one of the blowouts last year. Baltimore blowing out Buffalo. I'm really high on both of these teams. I have Buffalo being the number 1 overall seed, if I'm not mistaken, and I have the Buffalo Bills as my number 2. No, I had the Buffalo Bills as my number 1 overall, and the Ravens as my number 2, separated by 1 win. I think the Ravens are really in a good spot to win this game. For me, the key to the game is just going to be offensively. Is this Ravens offense still like really, really good, like top of the league good? Because I expect Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills to start slow. He did not play a single snap in the preseason, and I don't think that favors him. It was the first time he's ever done that and not play a snap in the preseason. So maybe there's some reverse psychology of trying to change starting slow by not doing what you had been doing. You see the same thing with Cincinnati trying to do that, but playing in the preseason. But I think the Ravens, if they're really, really good offensively, they're going to win this game, and I think they're going to win this game easily.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really important I don't want to. I feel like this is kind of cliche, but like who has ball last, right? Because this is a matchup of the 2 Super Bowl favorites. Baltimore is first at plus. Hold on, I just had it put up in my iPad. Went to sleep.
Plus 700.
Plus 700, and then
Buffalo's 750.
Yeah, and then it's also a matchup of the 2 MVP favorites: Lamar Jackson at plus 490, Josh Allen right behind him at plus 500. So this is potentially the best matchup we're going to see all season as far as top end team and QB talent goes. The 2 MVP favorites, 2 Super Bowl favorites. It's going to be an awesome matchup, and so that's why it kind of comes down to who has ball last, because these teams are very close. In the Super Bowl favorites, they're evenly matched, and so if Josh Allen gets the ball back down 3 or down 4 with a minute and a half left, like, can the Ravens stop them? If the Baltimore gets the ball back 2 minutes down 6, like, is Lamar Jackson just going to scramble on third downs and drive down the field and score a touchdown and win the game? I kind of think that's what it could come down to. I don't expect one team to win this by more than a possession. Sure. And so who ends up with ball last? That's kind of what I think is going to come down to.
Yeah, it's weird previewing this game week 1 because for so many other teams, there's like a lot of questions and position groups that are big weaknesses. And since you talked about these 2 teams being the favorite, they don't really have that, either of them. Buffalo maybe in their secondary a little bit. It's getting older. Maxwell Hairston's already hurt, the rookie that they drafted.
Yeah,
so
he may
won't
not play this year.
So
this year?
Yeah.
Wow. That's tough.
So that maybe is like the biggest weakness either of these teams have, but it's not like a huge one. But I guess if I'm like looking at something, it's like maybe the Ravens can exploit that secondary and really just kind of pass a ton on top of their great rushing attack with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. But it is just weird because it's not that I need to see a ton from these teams. We've seen it year in and year out. I'm just excited to see them get on the field and play.
Yeah, the Ravens defense, I think, is the misconception right now is that they were really, really bad last year. We talked about it in their preview. In their first 10 games, they gave up 300 passing yards per game. But in their last 9 games, they only gave up 175. So the secondary really kind of came together and started to play just better. They add, of course, Jair Alexander to already what is kind of a talented defensive backroom from a name perspective. Of course, Kyle Hamilton is a star, but Marlon Humphrey's still there. Jair Alexander is now there. And then, of course, Nate Wiggins, their first-round pick from now 2 years ago, is there. And they, of course, also added Malachi Starks. And so the defensive backroom, I think, could even improve more. And so I think the misconception for people right now is that the Ravens defense was bad and that they're going to continue to be bad. I think the defense might be the strength of the team this year. And that is also it's a concern for Buffalo with how slow they start, especially Josh Allen, against what is, I think, one of the best defenses in the league. I because it's Sunday Night Football, because it's 2 great teams, I would not be surprised if it came down to the last possession. But I really think Baltimore is going to win by double digits.
Okay.
I really feel that way right now. I think the only way it doesn't happen is if we just see some kind of ascension from a guy like Keon Coleman. Does Joshua Palmer just like add a bunch of consistency for the offense? Of course, Buffalo adds Joey Bosa, but Joey Bosa hasn't really been productive for a couple years, and they've got their own questions defensively. This is really for the most part, it's a Josh Allen team, and he is so good that he carries them as far as he does. But the signs don't look good right now for Buffalo, I feel like, in week 1. Are they going to be great? Yeah, I still have them as my number 1 overall seed. I picked them to win the game and our predictions to start the year. But the more I looked at it, I think Baltimore is in a great spot here.
Sure. So you basically already predicted the game. So let's get into predicting the game. Mentioned it previously, but Ravens are 1.5-point favorites on the road, and I have Baltimore winning this game. I don't think it'll be a blowout like JP thinks could happen, but I feel very confident that the Ravens are going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm going to bet on Josh Allen, the MVP from last year. I do think that there are some shortages on the defensive side of the ball and also in that wide receiver room. You've got a lot of, you don't have an Amari Cooper like you did 3 years ago or two years ago, or Stephon Diggs like you did a couple of years ago. You just don't have that guy who's like your go-to guy. So I think there's some shortages there. But I think Josh Allen's just going to get it done because it's kind of what he does.
Sure.
And I think that the fact that they're going up against the Super Bowl favorites is going to potentially help with that slow start. I'm hoping that they come out and kind of lock in from the get-go because it's such a big game, Sunday Night Football. I think that could actually help with their slow start, so that's why I'm going to help pick the Bills.
That's completely fair. In a lot of those slow starts, they've played the Jets 3 times to open the season with Josh Allen. They've played Pittsburgh. That makes sense. That's a completely fair point there. But again, I'm taking the Ravens to cover. Sure. I think they can win this game by double digits, but I'm really excited to watch it. It's a big, rematch from last year, and then it's a huge game because if these teams end up with the same record, this is the tiebreaker, the first game of the season, and these teams could look completely different later down the road, but this will be the factor in whether or not one of these teams gets home field advantage over the other. And from what we've seen, I think that would play a factor if they were to meet in the postseason again. Buffalo has hosted the Ravens twice and beaten the Ravens twice in the postseason, and the Ravens need this game to get home field advantage because they blew up Buffalo last year at home. But, man, it is a treat for Week 1. Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth, Patrick Mahomes will probably get mentioned more than Lamar and Josh Allen, but I can't wait.
Yep. Now let's get into the last segment of the show. We're done talking about previewing and predicting games. We have JP's best bets of the week,
where he previews and predicts games.
Well, it's not even previewing and predicting games.
They could be players.
As I said 2 hours ago, I've been up and going since 8 a.m., and I won't lie, a large part of it has been doing this because we were
redemption time
0-2-1 last week. I felt I liked what we were betting on. I thought we had good trends to go off. I'm not a guy who bets off feel. I'm not even necessarily a guy that bets off eye test. I bet off trends. Now, the Ball State Purdue was a feel and not a trend. So that one was different. But the Georgia pick and the Penn State pick were trends, and they were close. Of course, Georgia pushes, so we're at 0-2-1 after week 1. But for this week, I've got 5 bets. I'm normally going to do 3, but I've got 5 this week, and it's because I researched into a specific trend because it is really important for this helmet and this team, and in fact, even this team right here behind me going forward in week 1. I want to talk about rookie head coaches, their first time being a head coach in the NFL level, their first time being a head coach since 2021. I'm not counting the COVID year because I will explain later. I think the COVID year doesn't play a factor into this trend. But since 2021, we have had 19 rookie head coaches, of course, coach week 1. In those 19 games, against the spread, they are 9-9-1. Straight up, they are 9-10. So actually surprisingly better than you would think for a first-time head coach. They're 50-50. It's a pick-em. On the road, they are 5-7 against the spread and 4-8 straight up. So you don't necessarily want to pick a rookie head coach on the road. In those 12 games, they've been favored in 3 of them. One of those was the Urban Meyer game, which they got blown out by the Texans.
That's crazy.
So that's one of those favored by 3, and they got blown out by the Texans week 1 at Houston. At home, though, and this is where it leads into my best bet and my other best bets. Against the spread, they are 4-2-1. But straight up, they are 5-2. Rookie head coaches at home are 5-2, and we have 5 rookie head coaches this year, 4 of which are at home and 1 is on the road. And so I'll start with the one on the road. As I said, they are 4-8 straight up as a rookie head coach on the road. Brian Schottenheimer, in an hour and 15 minutes, will start his coaching career for the Dallas Cowboys as the head coach. And he's on the road at Philly, defending Super Bowl champions. And so my first best bet of the week is I'm going to take Philly to cover 8.5 and to blow out my Dak Prescott Cowboys. Unfortunately, I'm not betting on this, though, because I don't like betting on things I would hate to see. and I don't want to see Dak Prescott get blown out the first game of the season and
respect
already be under fire for the full year. So I'm not betting this, but I do really like this bet. And this one, like, if anyone's still watching, go ahead and bet it now, but no one else will see it because we'll post this, tomorrow, I guess?
Yeah.
So the other 4 are really the ones that people will actually get to see. The other 4, Kellen Moore, of course, my head coach, the New Orleans Saints head coach, is a 6.5-point underdog. So I'm taking New Orleans plus 6.5. But I'm also free to bet them straight up because they're 5-2 straight up. I think New Orleans wins this week. The Saints have won 6 straight season openers, and that includes DA, which I'm not even going to say his full name because he didn't deserve it. He was mentioned already on the show, which is mentioned more than he ever needs to be mentioned.
I think it was pre-show.
Also included in these home games, we have Aaron Glenn with the Jets. He hosts the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they are underdogs by 2.5. Give me the Jets plus 2.5. Ben Johnson is at home on Monday Night Football against the Vikings. He is an underdog by 1.5 points. I have it written wrong there, but give me Chicago plus 1.5. And then Liam Cohen is favored week 1 against the Carolina Panthers for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So give me Jacksonville minus 3.5. All of these I would bet straight up too. I would just take the money line because the trend says they're 5-2. And because they're not favored, you're going to get some plus money on there too. I think you're going to make a ton of money there as well. But give me those as my 5 best bets of the week. I think we're going 3-2 at worst. I really see a potential 4-1. I don't see 5-0.
So do not make this into a 5-leg parlay is what I'm hearing.
I would not make this a 5-leg parlay.
I mean, you could do $1 on the 5-leg parlay, and then if it hits.
I think you could do a teaser, which is one where you can miss a pick and hit on the other ones. And I think that's one you could do, but that's kind of a niche betting thing, and that's kind of hard to find. And you don't have a lot of sites that will give you that either. Specifically, only offshore sites that I've seen are able to give you that. But these are my 5 best bets of the week. New Orleans plus 6.5. I'd take the money line. Who dat? Give me the Jets plus 2.5 to upset Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Philly minus 8.5 tonight. Chicago plus 1.5 and Jacksonville minus 3.5. Those are my 5 best bets of the week. It won't always be only NFL. I'll bring in back college football, of course. But I researched the trend, and this is what I found. And these are my 5 best bets of the week.
I look forward to seeing how they do this week. Thank you, JP. That's the last segment of the show, though, so we can wrap this up just a little over 2 hours in.
I'm really impressed. I thought we were looking at a 3.5 hour show.
It's well done.
Because
2 hours,
5 college football games, 3 NFL games. I was nervous. Best bets, but we made it through. And if we can do 2 hours every Thursday, we're talking about 6 hours of podcast content a week. I'm all right with that.
Same.
Absolutely.
Sounds great to me. But with that being said, thanks you all for tuning in. Thanks for those who chatted in the chat. Thanks for doing that, and we really appreciate it. And we'll see y'all next time, which will be Sunday, to recap the college football games over this weekend. Peace.
See ya.